Chapter 1343. While these people were thinking about how to cross the river of blood and chi, Han Fei had just opened his eyes from cultivation. Little Black and Little White had successfully advanced. Sure enough, as expected, these two little fellows had both advanced to level 65. At this moment they were swimming around happily. The sense of alienation between Little Black and Little White was gone. Previously, when Little White swallowed the blue sea smoothie, Little Black avoided it as soon as it came out. After all, Little White was too cold at that time, and Little Black didn't dare to approach it. Now, after swallowing this fire dragon pearl, plus the part of the alien fire that he had swallowed before, Little Black was barely able to resist the extreme coldness on Little White. However, even so, although the two little fish began to play again, Little Black still deviated a little and didn't dare to be too close to Little White. It could be seen that the power that Little Black ate was not enough. Han Fei couldn't help but think, "Son, don't panic. Wait for me to find some more treasures. When the time comes, I'll get you a 10,000-year-old big red trunk, and you can eat it as much as you want." While Han Fei was teasing Little Black and Little White, he suddenly felt the ground shake. It seemed that in a place not far away, there was a battle breaking out, and the impact of some power triggered the earth veins. Because of the violent vibration, Han Fei could feel that this power was not far away from him. Han Fei was shocked. He didn't come for the fire dragon pearl. His real goal was the dragon origin chi. He hadn't even seen it yet. In this case, he couldn't let others rob him of it. Han Fei immediately said, "Little White, feel the source of the vibration." Because the vibration of the explosion was too close, Little White turned his head and looked at a corner of the cave. "Dad, over there, go down." Han Fei praised, "Hey, my daughter is really awesome." Han Fei waved his hand, and the infinity water appeared, turned into a blade top, and began to drill on the scale-like rock wall. Clank, clank, clank. Even with the infinity water, it took Han Fei more than 10 minutes to drill a hole in this rock wall. It was like a drilling machine rapidly drilling through the ground. After about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Han Fei felt more and more relaxed. In the end, he actually encountered a tunnel that had already been dug. Someone dug a tunnel? Wait, it wasn't just dug out. These marks seemed to have existed for countless years. The old turtle said, "The blood energy ahead is very heavy." Han Fei sniffed and said, "Yes, let's go take a look." Because the road ahead was unimpeded, Han Fei ran fast. In a few dozen breaths, they arrived at an underground port. Yes, the reason why he was sure that this was a port was that there was a small river crossing here. There were 9 boats by the river. These boats were not very big. They were about twice the size of his wind god boat. Looking at the material, it seemed to be made of ordinary wood. However, Han Fei certainly knew that this ship was extraordinary. How many years had this place been isolated from the rest of the world? Just by looking at the red river water and the thick smell of blood on the surface of the river, you could say, could a boat that could sail on this strange river be ordinary? Han Fei pondered for a moment, reached out, pulled out a shark, and threw it to the shore casually. The shark's body, half in the water, half on the shore. Then, a horrifying scene appeared. Half of the shark's body began to melt, and the flesh and blood melted in the blink of an eye. Han Fei casually pulled out most of the fish bones. The old turtle said in surprise, "A blood pool? Such a large blood pool must be haunted by evil things." Han Fei bared his teeth. "No way. Are you sure it's an evil thing? Will the dragon essence be in this land of evil things?" The old turtle said, "Well, I don't know much about the dragon essence. However, as far as I know, there are many reasons for the formation of a blood pool. The most common situation is that a great war has taken place here and a strong master has died. The strong master's vitality is not extinguished and his soul is dying. In the end, he wants to be resurrected and devours other creatures with his own flesh and blood. In fact, this kind of person is quite stupid. He even believes this kind of nonsense. Han Fei twitched the corner of his mouth and said, Haha, he even believes rumors. He's really stupid. What else? The old turtle said, and some people are in a half-dead state and use this method to absorb the vitality of foreign objects to nourish themselves in order to revive in the future. However, few people can really revive themselves. At least, I haven't seen many in my long life. The old turtle paused. There is another kind, which is that someone is raising corpses. They are raising corpses with the vitality of the dead masters. However, no one knows how many years this place has been empty. Even if they are raising corpses, they may have left long ago. Han Fei's heart did a flip. What if they haven't left? The old turtle was silent for a moment. Then they should be very powerful. If they can raise corpses to this day, I'm afraid the things they raise will be extremely terrifying. Han Fei secretly pinched his fingers, but he didn't expect anything. The old turtle said, What the hell are you pinching? The heavenly secrets here are all chaotic, which means that anything can happen. No matter how you pinch it, it's useless. Han Fei pondered for a moment and decided to try. If he guessed right, the dragon essence would definitely be extraordinary. If he didn't dare to fight for it, someone would definitely fight for it. If someone fought for it, someone would definitely fight for it. In that case, why didn't he fight for it? He was walking on the path of invincibility. Besides, in terms of speed, there shouldn't be any creature that could match him. Thinking so, Han Fei immediately walked to the ferry. Looking at the boats, Han Fei grinned. He jumped onto a boat, stretched out his hand, and the other boats disappeared on the long river of blood. I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. The old turtle was speechless. What are you doing? Are you afraid that someone will come to compete with you? Han Fei smiled. Everything is possible. I've already walked the path. I can't open a path for others for free. Besides, what if the boats break down halfway? I have to keep a few for myself, right? The point is, if I walk on someone else's path and leave them with no way to go, won't all the opportunities be in my hands? The old turtle was speechless. He thought to himself, I've never seen such a shameless person. He took away all the boats by himself. He's not leaving opportunities for others. The old turtle said, Then you'd better hurry up and go. The vibration just now seems to have erupted from this blood pool. This at least means that someone has been here and has already gone in. Han Fei nodded slightly. That makes sense. Since I have to explore this place, I must get the opportunities. Han Fei jumped onto the boat, pushed his palm with one hand, and the blood quickly drifted into the pool. On the way, Han Fei said, Old Yuan, what do you think is under this blood pool? The old turtle said, A blood pool is a blood pool. Generally, there is nothing under the blood pool. Basically, everything that can be corroded has been corroded. Of course, some things that can't be corroded will stay below. However, no one can get them. But, relatively speaking, generally no one can get them. Take this blood pool as an example. Even if your physique is amazing, you will die if you go down. There is no second possibility. So corrosive? The old turtle said disdainfully, What's so high about it? This blood pool is not terrible. I've heard of a blood pool purgatory, which is a place where people can be crowned emperors. Legend has it that even a venerable emperor can be corroded. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Have you seen it? The old turtle nodded. I've heard of it. Then you haven't seen it. The old turtle couldn't help but be furious. Nonsense. If I had seen it, would I still be here chatting with you? I would have been corroded. Han Fei looked at the river and couldn't help but sigh. In other words, there may be a lot of good things hidden under this blood pool. It's just that no one can get them. The old turtle didn't comment on this point. Han Fei took out his fishing hook and pondered for a moment. I'll just make another fishing line if I throw it away. With my current strength, I can hunt all creatures below the venerable level. Swish. When the hook was put down, Han Fei pulled it back in less than 2 seconds, only to find that the hook was broken. Prepared for the corrosion of the fishing line, Han Fei was not discouraged at all. He stretched out his hand, and spiritual energy gathered into a net. Han Fei threw the net of spiritual energy, but before he could pull it up, he immediately felt that he had lost contact with the spiritual energy. It turned out that this blood pool could even corrode spiritual energy. Tisk, interesting. The old turtle rolled his eyes. Don't try. What do you think the blood pool is? Is it a fish pond? Han Fei shrugged. I'm just trying. What if I succeed? Han Fei took the boat and drifted along the river. After only an hour, he saw a white mist. When he saw the mist, Han Fei immediately felt that something was wrong. Usually, when a mist appeared in such a weird place, it meant that something bad was going to happen. Fuse. Without the slightest hesitation, with Han Fei's current strength and the growth of Little Black and Little White, there would be no side effects if he just fused them. Besides, after the fusion, as long as he didn't fight, Han Fei could still maintain it for a long time. Using the yin-yang divine eyes, the moment Han Fei entered the mist, his face suddenly changed. In the mist, there was an aura that he was familiar with. Dragon might. The old turtle asked, but Han Fei ignored him. Dragon might? Is the azure dragon still alive? Wait, who said there would be no pressure after the dragon died? Han Fei realized that in the ideal palace, just a dragon's soul made his body almost unable to move. In this mist, although there was dragon might, it was far from enough to make his body unable to move. Although his strength was different from that of the past. However, in the face of the pressure of such a strong master, the so-called law enforcers and explorers probably didn't have much difference. The reason why the pressure was not enough might be because there was no dragon soul here, let alone a living dragon. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately felt a lot more relieved. Bam! Just at the moment when Han Fei felt relieved, he heard the sound of fighting. Han Fei sensed that there were explosive ripples coming. Han Fei murmured, "More than 300 kilometers? I can go and have a look." Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1344. When Han Fei came to the place where the battle broke out just now, he found that an insect had turned into a human form and was fighting with dozens of blood pythons with a strange weapon like a vajra in its hand. When he saw those blood pythons, Han Fei was stunned. Were they transformed by the blood in the blood pool? Half of their bodies were in the blood pool, and the other half were outside the blood pool. They were about 20 meters long. Why were so many of them here? Obviously, the insect was having a hard time killing them. When it saw Han Fei, it exclaimed, "Han Fei! Come on, help me!" Han Fei clenched his fists and punched out a series of golden fist marks. With a point of the infinity water, the 10,000 knives in one swept out and killed these blood pythons in an instant. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Why are you alone? Where are the others?" The insect hummed and sat on the boat. "We've split up. When we came in, there were 3 of us, and we found that this long river of blood and chi actually had many tributaries, which flowed to different places. It happened that we could see other boats on this long river of blood and chi, so we proposed to split up and find the way. In this way we would have a better chance." Han Fei frowned. "Many tributaries?" Han Fei was stunned. Why didn't I see any tributaries? However, Han Fei didn't panic and quickly asked, "What about these big pythons? Are there many blood pythons at the bottom of this blood pool?" The insect nodded quickly. "Yes, there are many. I'm afraid of snakes, but what I'm afraid of comes, and such a big one. I'm so scared." Han Fei was about to say, "Maybe you're just unlucky," however, suddenly, Han Fei realized that something was wrong. What did he fear? Han Fei couldn't help but take a deep look at the insect and suddenly said, "Not good, another snake is coming." The insect hummed, picked up its weapon, and stood on the side of the boat. Where? Han Fei said hurriedly, "Look carefully. Don't you see it? The insect shivered slightly, but the next moment it saw a big dark red shadow passing by at the bottom of the water. Hula! The blood broke apart and a huge head stretched out. Oh! The blood python roared, but there was no smell in its mouth, only blood spewing out. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. Is there something wrong with this place? In fact, when Han Fei shouted that there were snakes in the pool, there were no snakes in the pool at all. It was only because the worm was staring at the blood pool that the blood python emerged from it. At the moment when the blood python emerged, no information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. In this way, Han Fei was certain of one thing: the creatures in the blood pool were created by the fear in people's hearts. This insect was afraid of snakes, so when it was alone on the boat, it would worry if there were any living creatures in the pond. In other words, snakes. Therefore, all of this actually stemmed from his fear. Han Fei was not in a hurry to help kill the blood python. He just let the insect and the blood python fight. The Vajra scepter-like weapon in the insect's hand shone brightly. In the void, the insect horn was also colliding. Bang! 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 The blood python's defense was extraordinary. It was able to completely block the insect's all-out attack. The old turtle was amazed. So that's how it is. It wasn't that the insect wasn't powerful, it was just that the blood python was his own idea. Therefore, the true strength of the blood python was completely determined by the insect itself. If it thinks it can beat it, it can beat it. If it thinks it can beat it, it can beat it. Han Fei nodded slightly. That's why I feel that this place is very strange. It even has such a weird technique. Han Fei immediately thought of the sun-moon shells flying in front of him. However, they never appeared. Humph, not reliable. Han Fei wondered if a large amount of spiritual spring and spiritual fruits could emerge from this blood pool. However, this idea might be too far-fetched, so there was no response. The insect was still fighting. Seeing that Han Fei was motionless, it immediately became anxious. Han Fei, this big snake is extremely fierce. Help me. With a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water rolled up, and the bloody snake collapsed. The insect was taken aback and immediately exclaimed, "Wow! Han Fei, has your strength already reached such a level?" Han Fei couldn't help rolling his eyes. Damn it! This blood python is a figment of your imagination. In fact, it's not particularly powerful. You think it's powerful, so it's powerful. I think it's vulnerable, so it's vulnerable and can be destroyed easily. The insect froze for a moment, as if its brain hadn't figured it out yet. After a long pause it said, "I thought of it?" Han Fei shrugged. "Why don't you try to think of another one?" The insect shook its head like a rattle and hummed. "I don't like snakes. There are no big snakes in this Blood Chi River. They're all fake and illusory. In fact, there's nothing in them." The insect muttered to itself for a long time before it managed to calm itself down. Han Fei finally asked, "Okay, who are you? How many people came with you?" This insect was not an idiot. Since it was a top heavenly talent of the insect clan, it naturally had a way to control its thoughts when it realized the problem here. The insect said, "I am Insect Lulu. I came with Chong Xiaochong and Phoenix Head Achi. The three of us found this place, but we were chased by more than a dozen people from the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. We had no choice but to enter this Blood Chi River. Later, when we floated on this river, we found that the Blood Chi River was sandwiched by mountains and there were many tributaries. Because no one was chasing us, we scattered to explore." "Is that so?" Han Fei couldn't help but have mixed feelings. He was not surprised that two silly insects and a bird escaped from so many people. They were all top heavenly talents, and nothing was impossible. But this insect said there were many paths here. Then the question was, why didn't I encounter any mountains when I came here? Why didn't I find any roads? Han Fei immediately said, "Follow me now." With a thought, Han Fei used Little White's sensitivity to danger to track treasures. After a slight pause, he began to fly in a certain direction in the mist. There was no telling if he had been instilled with thoughts by insect Lulu, but after only about 10 minutes, Han Fei encountered a mountain. Within the range of visibility in the mist, Han Fei found 3 tributaries. Insect Lulu buzzed, "Look! I'm not lying to you. There are many roads." When he saw this road, Han Fei immediately shouted, "Shut up and close your eyes. I'll control the boat." Han Fei suspected that this road was an illusion. So, he simply closed his eyes and sailed with Little White's perception. Bam! After sailing for less than half an hour, nothing happened. It seemed to be very safe on this Blood-Chi River. But at this moment, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and stepped onto the bow of the boat. Insect Lulu opened its eyes and immediately appeared next to Han Fei. Bug looked at the blood pool and saw a black mass of unknown things swimming past. He immediately felt a chill run down his spine. Insect Lulu said, "I didn't think of it. My mind is clear now." Han Fei nodded. "I know. It's not an illusion this time. It seems that there are really creatures in this blood pool." Giggle, then, he heard a faint cracking sound coming from the hull of the ship. Han Fei and Insect Lulu turned their heads, only to see that many palm-sized, soft things similar to abalones had climbed on the side of the boat. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name blood toad. Introduction: a kind of plankton that feeds on poison and blood. High temperature and poison can't kill them. Their bodies can resist tens of thousands of degrees of heat, and their poison sacs are even effective on venerable realm creatures. Once the blood toad sticks to the body, it will turn into a pool of blood and become highly toxic. It will integrate into the body of the absorbed person and won't leave until the absorbed person loses all its energy. Level 63 Quality: Rare, contains spiritual energy greater than 7,943 points. Effect: inedible collectible blood poison, absorbable. Remarks: they are a group of creatures. The louder the noise, the easier it is to attract their attention. Han Fei didn't know what to do when he saw those creatures. Insect Lulu stretched out a big hook-like hand as if trying to hook these blood toads to death. Han Fei shouted, "Don't let them touch your body. You can only attack them from a distance." Insect Lulu was taken aback and immediately withdrew his hand. He opened his mouth and roared, "Ah!" Clatter! A patch of bloody toads exploded from the shockwave. However, the blood toads in the water were surging. More and more blood toads popped up on the surface of the river. Han Fei secretly cursed, "This idiot, you don't even know what they are and you're already using this kind of ranged attack." The range of the sound attack was extremely wide. Or you can just use infrasound waves. You only need one shock wave to directly shatter these blood toads. But look, you just shouted it out? I'm afraid the surrounding blood toads didn't want to come here, but they were attracted by you. Han Fei shouted, "Stop shouting. Are you an idiot?" With a thought, Han Fei launched the million knife art. A large number of blood toads were cut with one knife. However, the water around Han Fei and Insect Lulu had completely surged. Bam! He saw a bulging water bag explode, and the blood toad burst out like a fountain. F***CK. Even Insect Lulu, who had long been used to the Insect C tactic, was a little panicked when he saw this movement. Han Fei grabbed Insect Lulu's big horn and with a swish, appeared a kilometer away. The two boats behind him were directly lost. At the moment Han Fei left the boat, the two boats were pushed up. A large number of blood toads crawled all over the hull, filling the boat. Han Fei stood proudly in the air. With the close distance technique, he covered a kilometer in one step and quickly jumped out of this space. Insect Lulu froze for a moment and then shouted, "Not good, our boat is gone." Han Fei took 17 or 18 steps in a row, then waved his hand, and a new boat reappeared on the long river of Blood-Chi. As soon as the two of them landed on the boat, Han Fei immediately scolded, "Don't use sound wave attacks. Shut up. You bugs are the best at blabbering all day long. roar. Soon after the two of them landed on the boat, they heard a faint sound coming from a distance. Han Fei frowned. That seemed to be the sound of a dragon? Chapter 1345. Han Fei had been longing for it. He kept thinking about the dragon origin Qi and thought to himself, I can't let it be snatched away by others. Therefore, after hearing the dragon roar, Han Fei hurriedly started the ship without any hesitation. He wasn't worried about the lack of boats at all. After all, there were 9 more in Forge the Universe. Han Fei pushed his palms, and the surface of the river of blood and Qi exploded. Like a hovercraft, the river was pushed forward in the opposite direction. Chong Lulu watched from the side, feeling a little speechless. He thought to himself, my sound wave is a little loud, but no matter how I look at it, it's not as loud as yours. The dragon roar was not close. Han Fei felt that it was at least 1,000 kilometers away. At this time, the two of them hadn't left the waters of the Bloody Toads. Han Fei's movement had indeed alarmed the Bloody Toads. Although they weren't fast, neither was Han Fei. Bloody Toads gathered along the way. Soon, Han Fei and Chong Lulu saw waves of blood surging behind them. Chong Lulu buzzed loudly, They're here, they're here. Don't panic. He was in a state of shock. So what if he disturbed them? We haven't caught up yet, have we? The boat on the river of Blood Qi was not a fishing boat after all. Therefore, its speed was not fast. Even though Han Fei kept slapping the river, in less than half an hour, the bloody toads in the front and the back had gathered. At this time, the two of them had only run about 500 miles. At the moment when the fishing boat under his feet was swallowed by the blood toad, Han Fei grabbed Buliuliu again and stepped on the air, covering a kilometer with each step. Chong Lulu only felt that people like Han Fei were really powerful. Even in such a dangerous place, he could still be so unyielding and rash. Besides, wasn't Han Fei using the close-distance technique? It was said that this was the law enforcement ability of the Fish Dragon King in the Baibei Royal City, but he didn't expect that Han Fei could also use it. Chong Liuliu's thoughts were simple. He thought to himself, sure enough, our Shuemu Heaven's Pride is more powerful. What White Shell Royal City? What Blood Sea Divine Wood City? It was all rubbish. Han Fei and Chong Lulu were still controlling the boat and rushing forward. Not only Han Fei and the others were attracted, but other people were also attracted. Thousands of kilometers away, Zhang Xiaoyan's hands were trembling as he stood on a piece of land. In front of him was a spirit fruit that looked like a blood jade. Even before his reincarnation, he didn't recognize this thing. Now, he was even more dumbfounded. After picking the spiritual fruit, Zhang Xiaotian looked back at the river of blood and qi. Someone must have discovered this place and was on their way. Unfortunately, this place was too strange. Had it not been for the dragon might riddle barrier which had delayed him for too long, Zhang Xiaotian felt that he would have long found the correct path. It should be said that he was the fastest one. Although Han Fei came in directly from the entrance was definitely not easy to walk. If there were no accidents, Han Fei would encounter some treasures, but it would take time to collect them. After all, Zhang Xiaotian had collected quite a lot of things along the way, which had taken up quite a lot of time. But it seemed that the most important thing was still ahead. As a prodigy, Zhang Xiaotian didn't have any sense of crisis. Even if he had to fight Han Fei head-on, he wouldn't back down. This time, who got more treasures, him or Han Fei? Zhang Xiaotian wasn't sure. However, it was obvious that he was faster than Han Fei in terms of speed. As for the other heavenly talents, Zhang Xiaotian didn't care at all. In his eyes, except for Han Fei, no one in the three forces could fight. At this moment, Zhang Xiaotian just looked back and didn't plan to ambush them. Time was so precious that it was not worth it for him to ambush a few people and give up the possibility of getting the opportunity first. Zhang Xiaotian stepped into an ancient teleportation formation that appeared to be in ruins. The moment he entered the teleportation array, he set up a self-destruction array. Yes, he wasn't going to leave this path to others. Since he had used this teleportation array, he would destroy it. If Han Fei discovered it, who would be the winner? There was no way to tell. Just after Zhang Xiaotian left, in less than 20 seconds, a woman in a red gauze appeared on this land with a swish. Huh? Nobody's here? The blood demon looked around and found that this so-called land was no more than 1,000 meters long. It wasn't the end of the river at all. Bam! 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 Just as the woman was about to leave, rumbling sounds could be heard coming from the river of blood chi. The woman's face changed greatly. Who's so crazy? There were living beings in the river of blood chi. Once he was targeted by that thing, he would be done for. After being shouted at like this, the woman directly jumped onto her own ship. She secretly pushed the hull of the ship forward and continued to search for the path. When Han Fei and Chong Lulu arrived, Chong Lulu shouted, "Han Fei, there's land and mud over there." Han Fei sniffed and frowned. Zhang Xiaotian had just stopped here, and another blood demon seemed to have stopped here too. Looking at the blood demons that were chasing him, Han Fei didn't go ashore but chose to pass by. When he passed by the land, Han Fei scanned it with his senses, only to be surprised. There were traces of teleportation arrays? The old turtle said, "You seem to be too slow." Han Fei shook his head. "Don't panic. I'm not the only one who came in." In front of them, Little Black and Little White were delayed by swallowing the Dragon Balls, giving them a slight advantage. However, don't panic. They're obviously not far ahead of me. I just need to catch up with them. Han Fei kept moving forward. After a while, he encountered some branches of the river of blood of different sizes that were cut off by the mountains. With Little White's help, Han Fei didn't stop at all but continued moving forward along the river of blood. Somewhere, he encountered a dome of a mountain, and the two of them followed the river of blood and passed under the dome. However, after entering this tributary, Han Fei found that the dome above his head seemed to be getting shorter and shorter. He couldn't see the top just now, but now there was a dome 100 meters high, and the mountains on both sides of the river were slightly narrower. Hiss! This seems to be the right way, the old turtle said telepathically. At this time, the blood demons behind him caught up again. Perhaps the entire river of blood chi was their territory. Han Fei stomped on the ground, and with a buzzing sound, 7 or 8 spirit gathering arrays were imprinted on the stone walls on both sides. Han Fei suddenly took out his fishing hook and cast it dozens of kilometers away. Swish! The spiritual energy generated by the spirit gathering arrays could indeed mislead the blood demons. After being hit by the blood demons several times, the spirit gathering arrays dimmed and all collapsed. At this time, Han Fei pulled the boat away with the help of the fishing line on the top of the distant mountain. When flying in the air, Han Fei and Little White saw that there was only a long river of blood left below. The spirit gathering arrays had all collapsed, and the blood demons would probably catch up slowly. However, in terms of speed, they were much slower than Han Fei now. After all, Han Fei was flying like a swing, and he could travel dozens of kilometers at a time. Therefore, the blood demons were not a threat, and he wouldn't be killed by a group of blood demons in the law enforcer realm. After traveling for more than 200 kilometers, Han Fei put one hand behind his back and cast the fishing hook from time to time, anchored it on the stone walls on the left and right banks, and swung forward. This method was quite labor-saving, and Little White was dumbfounded. Little White thought that this was the correct way to sail a boat. If he could only drift on the river, how slow would it be? Suddenly, Han Fei saw that on the top of the mountain in the distance, there seemed to be a boulder hanging down. After taking a closer look, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that there were some traces of murals engraved on the boulder. Little White asked, "What's that?" Han Fei took a closer look. Those patterns were quite exquisite. Directly above the boulder, there was a monster with a human head and a snake body. It looked like a snake spirit, but it was a man, not a beautiful female snake. Beside the snake spirit, there were standing cranes that raised their heads and chirped, and swans that bent down and flew. That was all there were. The only creepy thing was that the eyes of the snake spirit seemed to be watching the people coming and going in the long river of blood. Han Fei frowned. Why are the snake spirit and a flock of auspicious birds drawn together? This kind of murals had no beginning or end, so it was really hard to guess. About half an hour later, Han Fei felt that this long river of blood should be coming to an end, because there was already the aura of vegetation on the shore. Sure enough, only 100 minutes later, Han Fei found a huge stone gate in the distance. Under the stone gate, from the shore to the gate, it turned out to be a wide road. In the middle of the road, there was a person walking at this moment. Han Fei took a closer look. Who else could it be if not Zhang Xiaotian? Little White shouted, "It's Zhang Xiaotian, the strongest expert in the Baibei royal city." Han Fei said, "Shut up. I know." Zhang Xiaotian also realized that Han Fei and the others were coming, but he didn't even look back. It seemed that the people who came were not his enemies at all. Little White was about to jump ashore, but was pulled back by Han Fei, who shouted in a low voice, "This road is not easy to walk on." Han Fei looked at the road that was only a kilometer long and 100 meters wide. On both sides of the road, there was a row of vegetation and thorns. Because they looked so neat, Han Fei realized that the demonic plants on both sides should be a kind of killing restriction. Besides, Han Fei felt a strong pressure here, which could be seen from Chong Liuliu's slightly trembling legs. Although Little White hadn't realized it yet, how could Han Fei not sense the dragon power here? Han Fei immediately turned his eyes to the T-shaped stone gate that was hundreds of meters high. On the stone gate, it was still the same painting he saw on the boulder just now. However, the painting on this gate was more complete. Han Fei glanced at it and found that this painting was divided into 3 parts. One part was T-shaped. The horizontal part was 100 meters wide and more than 50 meters high. This part of the painting was above the sky. Beside the snake spirit, there were standing cranes that raised their heads and chirping, and swans that bent down and flew. They were auspicious birds that belonged to the sky. On the left side of the snake spirit was a sun, and in the sun appeared a creature that Han Fei was familiar with, which turned out to be a 3-legged golden crow. Of course, he hadn't seen it before, but he had at least heard of it. On the right side of the snake spirit was the March moon. There was a fish shadow in the moon. Han Fei didn't know what it was. The second part was the part 100 meters below the T-shape, which should be the middle part of the painting. It was about 100 meters wide and more than 200 meters high. Han Fei could still understand the first half of it. That person seemed to be a very honorable expert in the 9th heaven. It was very likely that he was the so-called venerable sovereign. Then, Han Fei didn't know what the following part was. This part was obviously about the myriad clans in the human world. On the land there were all kinds of creatures, but not many of them appeared. Among them, there were humans, beasts, and some strange creatures offering sacrifices. Above the sky there were 3 temples. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Turtle, do you know what those 3 temples are?" The old turtle was silent for a long time. The legendary 3 divine temples. Han Fei was stunned. 3 divine temples? Which 3 divine temples? The old turtle pondered and said, "Don't ask me this question again. That's a place that even I am not qualified to ask. Few people know where they are. I just know that these 3 divine temples are very powerful. In addition to these 3 divine temples, there are some special forces that are not shown on this map. But once it comes to the temples, no matter how small the forces are, they are behemoths for you. Even if you have become a king." The old turtle's voice was quite heavy. He didn't seem to want to discuss this issue. This was the first time that Han Fei found that the old turtle avoided talking about a problem so much. Han Fei didn't ask much. Obviously, these 3 divine temples were still far away from him. After all, even the old turtle didn't want to mention them. He had never even heard of them. Han Fei continued to read. The last part of this T-shaped map was the sea. In the sea, there were no cities, but there were many behemoths. In the map, a variety of marine creatures were depicted, from sharks to seaweed, to octopuses, shells, and so on. Among them, there was a row of relatively illusory figures. Among them, Han Fei recognized the mermaids. Their tails were very distinctive and beautiful. At the end, in the deep sea, there seemed to be a huge shadow. His scalp went numb. Was this the real world? Even kings were not a big deal? A single picture, from the 9 heavens, to the 3 godly halls and then to the ocean. The so-called immortal palaces and royal cities were not even mentioned. Han Fei even suspected that the history depicted in this map was far before the Age of Doom. If there were temples, it might be the so-called Age of Gods. Who? Han Fei frowned slightly. Maybe when I enter the immortal palace one day, I will have a chance to learn more about this obscure history. Chapter 1346. While Han Fei was in a daze, Chong Lulu looked at him and didn't dare to disturb him. After a long time, when Han Fei came back to himself, he asked, "How about it? Do you want to walk this road?" Han Fei thought for a moment. "Do you want to walk in the front or the back?" Chong Lulu immediately said, "I'm very loyal. Of course, we'll walk together." Han Fei was speechless. Loyal? Shouldn't you give way to me? Of course, Han Fei didn't care about this. He asked this question to say that this road was not easy to walk on. If he wanted to walk in the front, there might be some danger. However, the brain capacity of the Zerg might not be enough, especially when it came to these twists and turns of thinking, unless they had already passed the tribulation or reached the venerable realm. Han Fei looked back. Wait. Of course they couldn't wait. Although this road seemed to be only a kilometer long, Zhang Xiaotian had only walked more than 400 meters, not even 500 meters. Since this Zhang Xiaotian was a reincarnation, he should have the means to continue forward. Just like Bai Suzhen, she was the reincarnation of the water fairy. How talented was she? Even when he just entered the demon-subduing tower, he hadn't divided his soul yet. Even when he fought with her, there were always wins and losses. This Zhang Xiaotian was also a reincarnation of a strong master. He was really not weak to have made it this far. After all, he had already passed the 4 9-king tribulations, and the 9 bloody spears were really not weak. Han Fei frowned. With a thought, he grabbed an arrow from the void and shot it directly at Zhang Xiaotian. However, as soon as the arrow entered the top of the road, a golden stream of light flashed, and Han Fei felt that a huge force was reversed to him. Bam! 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 Han Fei took 7 or 8 steps back in a row before he stopped, with a trace of blood dripping from his hand. Chong Lulu hurriedly said, "You can't attack. Even I can see that. In this case, how could he leave his back to you? There must be some rules on this road. Otherwise, he would never dare to do this." Han Fei nodded. "So, I was just testing him. The power of that arrow just now was not strong." Han Fei took a breath and said, "Okay, then come with me. However, if you feel that you can't go on, don't force yourself. In such a treacherous place, the more you force yourself, the less beneficial it will be." Chong Lulu immediately said, "Of course not. Our insectoid race has always been straightforward. If we can snatch resources, we will snatch them no matter what. If we can't snatch resources, even if they are placed in front of us, we won't snatch them." Han Fei was slightly stunned. Really? Did the Zergs know their limits so well? Why does he seem a little unreliable? Han Fei stepped onto the road without hesitation. As soon as his foot landed on the ground, he felt a terrifying pressure pressing down on his head. This feeling reminded Han Fei of the pressure he felt when he encountered the dragon's soul in the ideal palace. Chong Lulu, who was next door, immediately fell to the ground with a bang the moment he entered. From his human form, he was pressed into a 2-horned Hercules beetle, lying on the ground like a turtle shell. Han Fei took a deep breath. Although this terrifying pressure was not weak, it was not enough to make him unable to move. This place was very much like a test. Perhaps the mysterious man he met on the grassland didn't know that there was such a place on the island. Han Fei couldn't help but turn his head and glance at Chong Lulu. "How about it? Can you still hold on?" Chong Lulu's voice was trembling. "I feel that I am going to die. My insect life is about to collapse. What kind of power is this? It's terrifying. My divine soul is about to be crushed." Han Fei was helpless. "If you can't go forward, don't come up. To be honest, if you are like this, I'm afraid this opportunity has nothing to do with you." However, Chong Lulu replied tremblingly, "That's not possible. This kind of power is too terrifying. If I can withstand this pressure and continue to move forward, it will be of great benefit to my cultivation. Moreover, this opportunity might be given separately. It would depend on how far each person could go. It depends on how far each person can go. I am a heavenly talent of the insect race, and I will never admit defeat." When Han Fei heard this, he was almost amused by Chong Lulu. "You're already trembling like this. Why can't you admit defeat?" Han Fei thought of something. According to Chong Lulu, although he had just tried not to fight outside, could he still fight on the road? Han Fei thought of something again, grabbed a dozen array maps of the Great Plate Turtle Array, and threw them to Chong Lulu. "Take them. This is a defensive array. Whenever you encounter danger, uncover one of them. Take your time. I'll go first." Chong Lulu happily took the array map. However, he soon realized that something was amiss. "Under this kind of pressure, you still want to go first? Why don't you go to heaven?" However, as soon as Han Fei finished speaking, he strode out. Yes, he strode out. Even in front of the dragon soul, Han Fei could still run away. At this moment, the dragon soul didn't come out. Why would Han Fei be afraid? Chong Lulu looked at Han Fei, who was quickly pulling away from him, and was speechless. "I'm also a heavenly talent of the insect race. Even if I can't compare to Han Fei, I can't be that much worse." Stimulated by Han Fei, Chong Lulu immediately propped up his claws, held his big horns, narrowed his eyes, and rushed forward crazily. Rushing all the way, Chong Lulu felt that he was being shocked every second. Every step forward, he felt that his claws were softening. He felt that he had rushed down very, very far. When he opened his eyes, Han Fei was even further away from him. Looking back, Chong Lulu was speechless. It turned out that after running for a long time, he didn't even run 50 meters, and Han Fei had already gone down 200 meters. Chong Lulu let out a long breath. "It's terrible!" Chong Lulu trembled all over and stopped moving forward, and Han Fei was not much better. After walking 200 meters, Han Fei felt that something was watching him. This feeling of being watched immediately reminded Han Fei of the feeling when he first met the dragon soul. This made Han Fei subconsciously use the invincible will. Sure enough, as soon as the invincible will was activated, a layer of golden light condensed on his body surface, and Han Fei immediately felt the pressure was greatly reduced. Then he continued to move forward and walked quickly. Zhang Xiaotian didn't need to look back at all. He had 3 hearts and 9 brains. Therefore, he could see Han Fei completely. Seeing that Han Fei could walk so fast despite his physical discomfort, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. The invincible path? Zhang Xiaotian's face was ugly and his eyes were full of surprise. Although they had fought before, he didn't find that Han Fei had embarked on the invincible path. No wonder there was a special weird power in Han Fei's power when we fought before. Zhang Xiaotian immediately made up his mind. His body suddenly began to change. His feet turned into octopus tentacles, and he held 2 weird spears in his hands and supported them on the ground. The 2 of them walked one after the other, but Han Fei was obviously faster. After walking 300 meters, Han Fei took a break, looked at Zhang Xiaotian's back, and shouted with a smile, "Hey! Slow down. Don't fall." Zhang Xiaotian snorted coldly. "Catch up with me first." The poor guy tried hard for a long time and only moved 80 meters away. He hadn't even covered 1/10 of the kilometer distance. At this moment, someone else arrived behind him. With a chirp, a big bird flapped its wings crazily to control the boat. At the same time, feathers flew all over the sky, as if it was fighting someone. On the same boat as the big bird, an insect phantom was flying in the sky and colliding with a blood demon. Behind them, the 4 blood demons and Prawn Yue's trio were all alive. However, the few of them only took 3 boats in total. The reason was obvious from the rising water in the distance. The blood demons were surging, probably because the boats had been consumed. At this moment, Phoenix Head 7 shouted, "Chong Xiaochong, it's Chong Lulu and Han Fei. Let's go ashore." Chong Xiaochong hummed, "I'm so tired. These people are so annoying." Chong Xiaochong shouted again, "Chong Lulu, we're here." Phoenix Head 7 said, "Something's wrong. They must have encountered some difficulties. Look, the 3 of them are in different positions and moving forward slowly." Chong Xiaochong was slightly relieved. It seemed that it didn't make much difference whether they came early or late. Not far away, Shrimp Yue and Umbrella 7 looked at each other. Shrimp Yue frowned. "It's not convenient to fight in the Blood River. But what's going on that road? Why is it so difficult to walk 1,000 meters? Umbrella 7 said, "Look, Han Fei is catching up quickly, and Xiaotian has slowed down." Another person said, "Can we sneak attack from behind?" Shrimp Yue sneered. "If you don't want to die, you can try. If it's really possible, do you think Han Fei and that insect will let go of this opportunity?" That person was slightly frightened. "Then it seems that we all have to go on that road." On the other side, a blood demon said, "This road may be a kind of test. Also, it seems that they can't attack each other. Get ashore as soon as possible and don't fight with the bird and the insect." At this moment, Han Fei had barely reached 400 meters. However, there was only a thin layer of invincible will left on him. He looked back and found that everyone had come. However, there was nothing he could do now. Suddenly, Han Fei noticed that there was a power slowly drilling into Zhang Xiaotian's body. Although it was small, it was there. The power was like a wisp of smoke, curling up gently. "Is that dragon origin chi?" Han Fei's expression suddenly changed. Zhang Xiaotian had crossed 500 meters and even walked more than 50 meters. So, he could absorb the dragon origin chi after 500 meters? "Damn it, are you forcing me?" Roar. "Tiger King!" There was a deafening roar. As soon as Limelight 7 and Chong Xiaochong rushed into this road, they saw Han Fei roaring at the sky. Then, his body began to change, and many strange fur colors appeared. A colorful tiger was formed just like that. As the saying went, dragons and tigers fought fiercely. Han Fei's pupils suddenly turned vertical. With the power of a king, he roared, and the surface of his body shone with golden light. Han Fei growled, "Today, I will flatten your road." Chapter 1347. At this moment, Han Fei seemed to have sensed the dragon origin chi. It was just that he had arrived a little too late, allowing Zhang Xiaotian to gain the upper hand. If he were to continue hiding it, wouldn't Zhang Xiaotian be the one to snatch away all of the opportunities? Han Fei's eyes narrowed, and his body glowed with golden light. Han Fei swung his body and leaped out like a tiger. He felt the pressure from all directions, but with a thought, he raised his head and roared fiercely. "Ho!" Behind him, Chong Lulu and Chong Xiaochong were all dumbfounded. Even Shrimp Yue found it hard to believe. What the hell was Han Fei? Was he really a human being? The Phoenix-headed 7 murmured, "He's a beast." "Is Han Fei a beast?" Chong Xiaochong said, "It doesn't matter what race he is. Hurry up and charge forward. This pressure is too terrifying. It must be a great opportunity." Han Fei strode forward like a tiger, and it only took him 10 seconds to move forward 100 meters. Feeling the horror from his soul, Han Fei even roared, "I am an almighty king. How can I be suppressed by your mere coercion? Break it!" Zhang Xiaotian had never seen such a domineering person. Seeing the ferocious beast that Han Fei turned into, his body trembled and his hair bristled, but he still moved forward. It only took a few seconds for Han Fei to reach him. Han Fei glanced at Zhang Xiaotian, feeling the strange power that was drilling into his body, and couldn't help but sneer. "I'm going to take this opportunity." Zhang Xiaotian curled his lips. "It's not the end yet. I don't know what the result will be. You can take action now and let me teach you a lesson." Han Fei ignored Zhang Xiaotian. "Do you think I'm stupid? Take action now? I'm bound to be restricted by the rules. The advantage that I've worked so hard to get here may be gone now." Thinking of this, Han Fei roared and opened his mouth. He used the devouring technique to devour the strange energy from the void. Who? When the surging dragon origin chi drilled into his body, the dragon origin chi wandered in his body, partly fusing with his flesh and blood, partly fusing with his bones, and partly making his mind clear. Han Fei couldn't help but feel refreshed. The dragon origin chi could actually enhance the growth of soul power? But there were clearly no ownerless souls. It was a pity that the mouthful he had swallowed was too little. At this moment, he was only a few meters ahead of Zhang Xiaotian. It was not yet time for him to be proud. Glaring Vajra. Fuse. Attach. Devil transformation. Han Fei's eyes changed color, a pair of eyes grew on his shoulders, and his body bulged. Behind him, a golden giant appeared out of thin air. At this moment, Han Fei had nothing to hide. Actually, even if these trump cards were to be displayed for others to see, they would not be able to do so. Except for the invincible will, it was really hard to distinguish the others. Han Fei felt that the soreness of his flesh and blood was greatly relieved. At this moment, he roughly understood what dragon essence chi was. In fact, it was a special kind of energy. Although he did not know what the difference was between it and the primal chaos aura. However, this kind of energy could cleanse the body, improve the physique, and stabilize the soul. After going through the cleansing and baptism of the dragon Yuan Qi, the most fundamental benefit was the increase in strength. However, this was not enough. If this was the only benefit, then the strong master in the grave shouldn't have emphasized it to him. Therefore, either this was not the real dragon origin chi, or the amount of dragon origin chi was not enough. At present, it seemed that both of these situations were possible. After all, he was now at the door of a door. This door hadn't been opened yet, and the road in front of it was not for ordinary people to walk. Could it be that the real dragon origin chi was inside the door? It was hard to say. Han Fei quickly surpassed Zhang Xiaotian. In the end, just as he was about to charge forward and reach the end in one go, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. As if the world had just been created, Han Fei found that his surroundings were blocked by heavy fog. Looking forward, in the white fog, in the 9 heavens' starry sky, there was a figure appearing. When he saw the figure, with a bang, Han Fei directly fell to the ground. The terrifying pressure even exceeded that of the dragon origin chi just now. Everyone, including Zhang Xiaotian, was dumbfounded. What's going on? Zhang Xiaotian suddenly realized that there should be a special power 600 meters away. Otherwise, with Han Fei's strong state just now, he would definitely go all the way. However, Han Fei's situation was not over yet. Puff, 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 puff. Cracks appeared on Han Fei's body one after another. In an instant, golden blood surged out. Before, Zhang Xiaotian felt that Han Fei was not really much stronger than him, and it was just that Han Fei had been through the tribulation longer. But now, when he saw the golden blood flowing out, he was shocked. Zhang Xiaotian couldn't help but murmur, "Beyond the scope of human bloodline?" Zhang Xiaotian was shocked. He was naturally different from those ordinary heavenly talents who had not seen much. He was old and experienced. Being able to reincarnate was not something that ordinary people could achieve. But at this moment, he was still shocked. Even in his previous lives, it was the first time that Zhang Xiaotian had seen someone transcend the limits of the species when he was only an explorer. Immediately, Zhang Xiaotian narrowed his eyes and stopped moving forward. At least, what Han Fei was experiencing now must be horrifying. He had to think about it. At the front, Han Fei, the Tiger King, was pressed to the ground. He tried his best to stand up, but it was still not enough. The phantom above the sky seemed to be staring at him. He couldn't even straighten his body with just a gaze. The old turtle was also shocked. Not good, this is not dragon power, this is emperor power. What did you see? Why is there emperor power? Oh! Han Fei let out a muffled roar from his throat. How the hell do I know? This be asterisk starred, he's looking at me. Hush! The old turtle was shocked. What are you cursing? Do you want to die? How dare you curse an emperor? You don't know how you died, do you? Han Fei grunted. What do you know? He's just a phantom, like the phantom reflected by the door. He's not a real person. The old turtle roared. You can't curse if he's not a real person. The perception of a venerable emperor is beyond your imagination. Even if he's 10 miles away from you, he may be able to perceive you. Maybe as long as you say his name, he will know that someone is thinking about him. Han Fei gritted his teeth. I don't know his name. No, I have to get up. I'm walking on the path of invincibility. Why am I lying on the ground? Han Fei stood up vigorously. In the end, when he was halfway up, he heard a cracking sound. His front claw broke. His bones were fractured. In the next second, he lay down again. Gulp. Everyone was dumbfounded by Han Fei's miserable look. What kind of terrifying pressure was this? Even a freak like Han Fei could be suppressed to such a state? Everyone looked at him again. Zhang Xiaotian was no longer moving. He was standing where he was and began to absorb the power that escaped from the void. Although he didn't seem to be absorbing much, he had been absorbing it all the time. Holy light technique. The healing holy light descended, and black and white flashed in Han Fei's eyes. He suddenly remembered one thing, the Taoist heart, that the old turtle said. The old turtle said that a person's Taoist heart was so firm that he wouldn't feel any physical pain. To put it bluntly, he didn't care about himself. Han Fei didn't think he could reach that level for the time being. However, what if he forcibly erased this pain? God. Activate. God. Technique. The terrifying holy light was descending. In an instant, the golden blood flowed backward on Han Fei's body. His wounds healed, and his bones recovered. Bam! Under everyone's astonished gaze, Han Fei suddenly stood up, raised his tiger head, and roared at the phantom. Oh! Han Fei once again gave the phantom 100 years of his lifespan. The moment he got up, he rushed on the road. Thud, thud, thud. Every time Han Fei took a step, the ground would shake violently. However, the moment Han Fei got up from the ground, the surrounding white mist dissipated, and the figure at the end of the white mist finally disappeared. In the eyes of others, Han Fei's figure began to fade as he ran. Then Han Fei's men disappeared. Zhang Xiaotian's face changed greatly. Han Fei made it? Han Fei knows the apocalyptic divine technique? Han Fei has the humanoid king bloodline? Zhang Xiaotian once knew that a long time ago, the king of man crossed the east. That was his great Tao. Han Fei could do it too? Could it be that the sovereign personage was still alive? Is there an inheritance from another generation? Seeing that he was only 30 meters away from him, Zhang Xiaotian hesitated. He had fought Han Fei before and knew how strong Han Fei's physique was. This was a guy who walked the path of invincibility, and had a lot of luck on him. In the end, he even used the Apocalypse divine art, and only then did he successfully cross this path. Could he do it? Zhang Xiaotian took a deep breath and tried hard for a long time before he finally reached the spot where Han Fei had fallen. He did not move forward but instead began to absorb this strange energy. Zhang Xiaotian narrowed his eyes. Someone like Han Fei is blessed with great fortune. It's the White Armor Emperor's job to think about how to deal with him. I'm still growing up. There's no need for me to fight to the death with Han Fei. Well then. Han Fei roared and rushed to the gate. However, as he rushed, the scene in front of him changed, and he came to a red land. On this land there was a big bone, which was 30,000 meters long. With the big bone as the boundary, there were a total of 95 branches of the river of blood and qi. Hiss! Seeing this scene, Han Fei gasped. This is a dragon bone? Chapter 1348. This was the first time Han Fei had seen such a shocking scene in his life. This feeling was just like when he saw a dragon boat for the first time, and his heart was full of shock. When he first saw the dragon boat, Han Fei thought, how could there be such a big boat in this world? Now, Han Fei had the same feeling. How could there be such a huge creature in this world? Previously, Han Fei had some imagination about the dragons in myths and legends, and he thought he might encounter them in the future. However, even the dragons in his imagination were not so huge. Although Han Fei had seen the dragon soul in the ideal palace, he only saw a big head at that time. But now all he could see were dragon bones. The bones were crystal clear like jade, and there were even faint red threads on them. The faint red threads on these dragon bones were still trembling slightly. It was as if many red threads were supporting this enormous body. Directly in front of Han Fei, there was a dragon head, with dragon teeth and dragon horns on the head, just like in the legends. The horns were like deer, the head was like a camel, the eyes were like a rabbit, the neck was like a snake, the abdomen was like a snake, the scales were like a fish, the claws were like an eagle, the palms were like a tiger, and the ears were like a cow. Han Fei was still marveling at the magic of these dragon bones, when he suddenly thought, this shouldn't be an azure dragon, right? After all, the thing he got earlier was a fire dragon pearl. But what about an azure dragon? It was also known as the azure dragon of the East, although he didn't know if this was the correct name in this world. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like it was playing with fire. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the dragon bones that were overflowing with red threads and terrifying power, and slowly recovered from the previous shock. Gurgle, a faint red halo suddenly began to emerge from those red threads. From the outside, the dragon's skeleton was covered in red threads that looked like blood vessels. However, Han Fei and the old turtle almost found something wrong at the same time. These red threads were all from the tributaries of the 95 blood rivers. And these threads were not blood at all, but the dragon origin energy that Han Fei had just swallowed. However, if the dragon origin energy outside the door was in the form of gossamer gas, then these threads were now like veins in the void, intertwining with each other. But now they were like veins in the void, intertwining with each other. In terms of quantity, it far surpassed the dragon essence qi in front of the giant door. The old turtle said, "This should be the so-called dragon essence energy, there's no doubt about it. But what I don't understand is that this dragon shouldn't be on par with venerable sovereigns. How did he die behind this door?" Han Fei frowned. "Are you sure we are behind the door?" The old turtle thought for a moment and said, "Oh, I can't be sure, but it could be in another space. The dragon origin qi is gathering, and it has just been gathered." Han Fei saw that the dragon origin qi was gathering into a cocoon at the center of the dragon bone's eyebrows. It was clear that there was such a commotion when he came in. Han Fei asked suspiciously, "Old Yuan, does it look like an array?" The old turtle pondered for a long time. "It doesn't look like a formation, but it seems like some kind of power is recovering. F***ck. Han Fei was dumbfounded. "Revive? He's been dead for so long, and only his skeleton is left. How can he still be revived?" The old turtle said, Of course I can't recover my physical body, but as for my soul… Oh, damn! Bam! Without saying a word, Han Fei instantly condensed a fist and punched the big cocoon with the sacrificing punch. Voila! A large amount of dragon origin chi gathered into a mist like a big shield, but it was blown back dozens of meters by the sacrificing punch. Then, it surrounded the power of the sacrificing punch. Bam! The sacrificing punch exploded, but it was tightly wrapped by the massive dragon origin chi and didn't damage the big cocoon at all. Han Fei's face changed drastically. Not good, the human expert in the grave is hostile to the dragon race. If the dragon's soul wakes up, how am I supposed to get out of here alive? Old Yuan, attack and kill him. The blood mist spread, trying to wrap and protect the big red cocoon where the dragon origin chi was gathered. Puff, puff, puff. The old turtle took action, but red lines spread out. The old turtle's black mist power was poked into a hornet's nest in an instant. He heard the old turtle yell, "That won't do. This emperor's current strength is too weak. Unless you have chaotic chi to supplement me, you can't resist this dragon origin chi at all." Han Fei turned into a big ape and stretched out his hand, and the embroidery needle appeared. Monkey King 3000 strike. Han Fei wanted to break the big red cocoon now. No matter what, he couldn't let anything weird come out of the big cocoon. At this moment, Han Fei attacked with all his strength, and the force of 1,000 waves surged. Oh! Puff! Suddenly, there seemed to be a dragon roar shaking in the big red cocoon. Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood. The embroidery needle in his hand was directly knocked away. Damn it, is it really reviving? The old turtle roared frantically, "Rush in, rush in!" Han Fei was helpless. "I'm crazy. That's a dragon. Wouldn't I be courting death if I rushed in?" The old turtle said eagerly, "No. Have you forgotten how you swallowed my power? As long as you attack, it can't deal with you as it doesn't even have a physical body. Or it can't deal with your little calabash." The old turtle continued, "According to what you said, dragons and humans are enemies. How are you going to fight this time?" Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei felt that it made sense. Although he didn't know if this big cocoon would really be dangerous, he was really panicking now. However, he was really panicking right now. He felt that if he couldn't get rid of this cocoon, he would probably die this time. This kind of premonition couldn't be said to be deceiving himself. As an explorer, he had even comprehended the Tao. This kind of thing had become a part of his vigilance. Han Fei gritted his teeth. Gemini Divine Technique. 2 clouds of mist suddenly rose. With a thought from Han Fei, the black mist body entered Forge the Universe, and the white mist body stepped to the big cocoon. Seeing that Han Fei took the initiative to come over, the red mist immediately rolled over with countless red threads. Less than half a meter away from the big cocoon, Han Fei seemed to see a shadow swimming inside. Although it was very blurry, it should be in the shape of a snake or a dragon. Seeing this scene, Han Fei's expression became even more solemn. He was here to hunt for treasures, not to deliver a package. When encountering such a prehistoric super-strong, the first thing he had to think of was to prevent himself from being possessed by this kind of creature. However, because of the demon purification pot, theoretically, it was impossible for him to be possessed. This was why the old turtle asked him to rush into the dragon origin chi. Han Fei was speechless. What was the strong master of the desolate tomb thinking? Why did he ask him to do such a dangerous thing? This was a genuine dragon race creature. Even if it died, it must be someone that a person like him could deal with? Bam! Han Fei turned back to human form, surrounded by thousands of knives, and held the sacrificing punch. Looking at the dragon origin chi that looked like a riddle, with a bang, Han Fei directly crashed into it. When the surrounding space became sticky, Han Fei drew his sword. Snowmorn burst out with dazzling brilliance, forcibly splitting a gap in the barrier. At this point, Han Fei finally rushed to the side of the dragon origin cocoon. Void lines. In the blink of an eye, all of the void lines were wrapped around the cocoon. Han Fei knew that he would be the one who would be hurt, but he still did it. He needed to activate the demon purification pot. Oh. Following the void lines, Han Fei heard one dragon roar after another. Pooh! Sure enough, Han Fei vomited blood crazily. He felt that blood was gushing out of his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, and his ears were already ringing. At the moment when his soul was injured, the stress mechanism of the demon purification pot should be activated. Otherwise, if his soul was injured or perished, where would the demon purification pot go? This was Han Fei's plan. With his mouth full of golden blood, Han Fei roared, "Suck it!" At that moment, green vines and leaves extended from between Han Fei's eyebrows. Moreover, there were 3 such small vines extending out at once. In Han Fei's sea of consciousness, the old turtle looked at the spinning demon purification pot above his head. Originally, he thought that this was the moment when the demon purification pot was at its weakest, and he should be able to take the opportunity to escape. However, as soon as the old turtle's body moved, the gourd directly pressed down and smashed on his turtle shell. Cough, cough, crack. The old tortoise let out a groan as a crack appeared on his soul armor. This scene scared him so much that he didn't dare to move. The old turtle was pressed down by the demon purification pot and didn't dare to move at all. The dragon energy in the outside world seemed to have gone crazy and began to gather towards Han Fei. It was originally just an independent big cocoon, but now it directly turned into 2 big cocoons. Ow, 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 Han Fei screamed. That was because countless strands of dragon essence qi were beginning to enter his body. In addition to the small vines devouring, Han Fei also felt that the blood in his whole body was boiling. In short, his flesh, bones, and soul seemed to be burning. The most terrifying thing was that his skin directly turned bright red, looking like a monster. Han Fei was wolfing down the dragon energy with the swallowing technique. In just 10 minutes, he had become more than 3 times fatter. No. I still have to cultivate the indestructible body art. Chilla. This time, it was really burning, and Han Fei's skin was burned to nothing in an instant. The dragon energy rushed directly into his flesh and meridians. The feeling of his bones being rubbed into powder came back at this moment. Hold on, hold on. As long as I break through this level of the indestructible body art, the rest is all about the soul. It has nothing to do with the body. While Han Fei was in excruciating pain, the dragon shadow next door was boiling and began to roar incessantly. Han Fei was dizzy and felt that his head was going to explode. His body hurt, his soul hurt, everywhere hurt, and he felt that his body no longer belonged to him. Damn, the apocalyptic divine technique. Han Fei knew that if this went on, he would be shocked to death even if he didn't die of pain. Immediately, he cast the apocalyptic divine technique again. In any case, it would only consume a few years of vitality to relieve the synesthesia. Therefore, in one of the 2 big red cocoons, a beam of white light descended from time to time. In just half an hour, the white light had descended more than 30 times. Half an hour later, with a crack, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. He had made a breakthrough. Chapter 1349. Han Fei was already numb to the pain. Like smoking marijuana, every once in a while, Han Fei would cast an apocalyptic divine technique on himself to refresh himself. Relying on the fact that he could absorb the vitality of living creatures, Han Fei didn't panic at all and took this opportunity to cultivate the indestructible body. Before he finished cultivating the indestructible body, Han Fei could no longer suppress his aura. All aspects of his body had been polished extremely solid, and he directly made a breakthrough. It could be seen how much dragon origin chi Han Fei had absorbed this time. However, this was not all. The breakthrough made Han Fei suddenly wake up from a state of confusion. At this moment, the dragon shadow next door was no longer roaring. and Han Fei felt that his lower body had been transformed into a golden body. Even his 2 arms and spine had turned into gold. What was missing were the ribs and the skull. At this moment, it was the ribs that were still in the process of being golden. Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. How could the King's skull turn into a golden body? While resisting the pain, Han Fei asked, "Old Yuan, will the skull turn into a golden body break my head?" Unfortunately, at this moment, the old turtle was suppressed by the demon purification pot. As long as the demon purification pot didn't leave, it didn't dare to say a word. Han Fei's words were like a stone thrown into the sea. Han Fei thought it was because of the dragon origin chi that old Yuan temporarily lost contact with him. Now, Han Fei felt that the ribs should be almost ready. As for the head, let's wait a little longer. In any case, this dragon origin energy seemed to be endless. He still had to borrow the dragon essence chi to raise his cultivation level first before thinking about anything else. Half an hour later, after more than 20 apocalyptic divine techniques, Han Fei's ribs were tempered, leaving only the skull. Not in a hurry to temper the skull, Han Fei crazily consumed the spiritual spring and forged the universe with the infusion of the dragon origin chi. Level 75-76 Level 77 Han Fei was about to break through the barrier of the intermediate explorer in one fell swoop. However, when the terrifying spiritual energy and dragon origin chi in his body rushed out, Han Fei's skull cracked with a crack before the barrier was broken. Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out, and Han Fei suddenly found that the bone between his eyebrows had cracked. Han Fei had never thought that his bones would be fractured by cultivation. What kind of logic was that? Is it because skull hasn't turned into gold yet? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. Could it be because of the Gemini divine technique that he had used? After all, the body of Black Fog was only half of him. This dragon essence chi should not be able to kill him immediately. Whether he hid in Forge the Universe or used the Gemini divine technique, he should have a chance to escape. Han Fei gritted his teeth, and with a thought, the body of white mist appeared too. Buzz, after deactivating the Gemini divine technique, Han Fei's body and soul became one. In an instant, Han Fei's fat body that was about to explode began to shrink like a balloon, as if it had a vent. Whoo! After 100 seconds, when his body recovered to about 3 times its original size, Han Fei felt that he should be able to make another breakthrough. Bang, crack. Not good. It's the heavenly awakening divine art. At the moment when a massive amount of energy broke through the threshold, suddenly, the center of Han Fei's eyebrows cracked again. A crack appeared on the top of his skull. Han Fei had a severe headache and didn't feel well. The white beam of light descended, and Han Fei felt as if he had drunk a mouthful of divine wine and came back to life again. At this moment, the old turtle tentatively said, "Don't try any more." Han Fei was surprised. Old Yuan, you are still here? Tell me first, what's going on?" The old turtle secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Han Fei would kill himself. Otherwise, Han Fei would kill himself before the demon purification pot confiscated him. The old turtle said, "Can you move the gourd away from me first?" Han Fei cast a heavenly awakening divine technique on himself and immersed his soul into his sea of consciousness, only to see that the demon purification pot was pressing on the old turtle's turtle shell. Moreover, it even caused a crack in the turtle shell. Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. The demon purification pot hadn't attacked the old turtle for a long time. It didn't make sense that it would attack the old turtle now. The old turtle must have been doing something just now, but he didn't succeed. Han Fei said leisurely, "Old Yuan, we are already so familiar with each other. Let's not beat around the bush. As for what happened, I won't ask any more. However, tell me first, why can't I make a breakthrough now?" The old turtle pondered for a moment and seemed to accept Han Fei's proposal. Seeing that Han Fei came to ask in person and the demon purification pot didn't respond, it said, "The skull is the most difficult place to turn into a golden body. Your strength has increased too much, but the skull is the only place that hasn't become a golden body. The power is extremely unbalanced, so you can't make a breakthrough. Besides, although you haven't become a golden body, you have refined too much this time. A few days ago, your soul was cut in half, which is also an imbalance. Therefore, it is impossible for you to make a breakthrough with a top-level spiritual heritage that has surpassed the mortal heritage. Even if you break the barrier of the intermediate explorer, it will inevitably lead to the instability of your foundation." Hearing this, Han Fei immediately understood. "Oh my God, it turns out to be like this. I thought it was because I used the Gemini divine technique." The old tortoise added, "The dragon essence chi is starting to weaken a little. Find a way to break the big cocoon next to it and see if you can shatter it? Swallow his divine soul?" Han Fei was stunned for a moment. "I didn't even think about it. Is the old turtle asking me to kill a dragon soul?" Wait, Han Fei suddenly realized something. Yes. This is just a dragon soul in a state of awakening, not a real dragon soul phantom. Why can't I kill it? Didn't the old turtle say that my strength has grown a lot? Oh. When the heavenly awakening divine technique descended, Han Fei roared, "Explode!" Because there was no water to nourish it, the power of the explosion of the infinity water was slightly weaker than the last time. However, Han Fei's continuous breakthroughs also made the infinity water grow at the same time. Therefore, its power was not weak. At this time, Han Fei's body had been destroyed to numbness by the indestructible body, and Han Fei didn't care about the pain caused by the explosion of the infinity water. The dragon origin chi was blown up, and the sacrificing punch burst out again, hitting the big cocoon with the dragon shadow next door. Sword drawing technique. Knock on the heavenly gate. Oh. Han Fei even used the 100 Beasts soul-suppressing roar. Didn't you roar at me just now? Okay, now I'm going to kill you. Roar again if you can't. If you can't kill me, I'll kill you. Sure enough, at the moment when the 100 Beasts soul-suppressing roar burst out, the dragon's shadow in the big cocoon next door fluttered and roared again. This time, Han Fei was still bleeding from his eyes, nose, mouth, but he felt better than before. As soon as the big cocoon was opened, Han Fei jumped in with a swish. When the old turtle proposed to him just now, Han Fei was already ready. First, he would slay the dragon soul, then absorb the dragon energy, then temper his body, and then make a breakthrough. In this way, the water reached the channel, and he went through a perfect process. However, this first step didn't seem so easy to do. As soon as Han Fei jumped into the big cocoon next door, the void lines also buckled up. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that a terrifying soul power was hitting him. Immediately, he shivered and shouted, "Fuse!" Little Fatty was an ancient mutant with a weak divine beast bloodline. It could ignore the spiritual attacks of all creatures within 10 levels of itself. Now, Han Fei was facing the soul attack of the dragon soul shadow. Although Little Fatty wasn't strong enough, its spiritual resistance wasn't weak. Besides, it was hard to break through it. Bam! Under the terrifying impact, the surrounding void collapsed. The power of the soul attack this time was beyond his imagination. A scene that chilled Han Fei's heart appeared. On his shoulder, one of Little Fatty's eyeballs completely exploded. At that moment, Little Fatty said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Kill him quickly. I can still resist one more blow before I die." Han Fei burst into fury when he heard that. He didn't expect that Little Fatty would be seriously injured in the fusion state and was about to die. Ho! As soon as the second dragon roar came out, Little Fatty's remaining eyeball on Han Fei's shoulder instantly exploded. Han Fei himself was bleeding from the explosion too. But Han Fei didn't care. He shouted with bloodshot eyes, "Calabash, kill it!" Oh! The soul-suppressing roar of 100 Beasts was unleashed. However, it wasn't enough. Even if the dragon's soul had just been awakened, it wasn't something that Han Fei, an intermediate explorer, could penetrate. At the critical moment, the demon purification pot seemed to understand Han Fei's meaning and unhurriedly cut off a small vine that was absorbing the dragon origin energy. He saw that the small vine had directly latched onto the dragon's soul phantom that was 7 or 8 meters long. Burp! The dragon's soul seemed to want to continue roaring. However, it was strangled by the small vine and the dragon roar disappeared. Then, the small vine went deep into the dragon's shadow. With the help of the small vine, Han Fei temporarily controlled the awakened dragon soul with the void lines. F***CK explode. Swish. The small vine suddenly shrank, and Han Fei stepped on the soul-driving array under his feet, and dozens of coiled turtle arrays broke through the air. Rumble outside. The Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor were waiting for the result. Some people had just entered. Now, this mountain range had gathered most of the creatures on this island. Rumble, all of a sudden, the crowd saw mountains collapsing one after another in the mountain range. Crack! A terrifying array suddenly appeared, directly covering the entire mountain range. In the array, the long river of blood was still flowing, and the smell of blood soared into the sky. The Life Queen and the White Armor Emperor looked at each other solemnly. "There's a blood pool here?" Chapter 1350. The blood pool was supposed to be in an independent space, but because of the death of the dragon soul, the whole mountain collapsed, causing the blood pool to burst out. However, everyone could only see the blood pool. Outside, there was a dense array of blood chi. Unless an expert took action, this place wouldn't have been destroyed. At this moment, the people who were floating on the blood pool didn't feel this way. They only felt that the earth was shaking. Apart from that, there was only the blood toads. But as long as there was a boat, the blood toads weren't a big problem. After all, they weren't Han Fei. They didn't dare to make too much noise and attract all the blood toads in the water. At this moment, the biggest problem was that the gate where Han Fei and Zhang Xiaotian were hadn't appeared. It was still hidden somewhere. The White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen didn't look at the people on the blood pool at all, but at Zhang Xiaotian and Han Fei. Thousands of beasts were running away. The intense blood chi here terrified them. However, there was dragon origin chi in some places. Many creatures gathered there and swallowed it crazily. The Insect King, Changshuiqin, and Yunchu seemed to have received the news. They all grabbed a wisp of dragon origin chi. No one had ever seen this kind of power, including the Life Queen and the others. Cough, cough, cough. Covered in blood, Han Fei was lying in a vast expanse of dragon origin chi like a salted fish. His body slowly began to swell again. A white pillar of light descended, and the apocalyptic divine technique fell again. Han Fei estimated that this time, he probably consumed at least another 300 years of vitality to support the cultivation and growth this time. However, Han Fei didn't cultivate the indestructible body at this moment. Instead, he split hundreds of souls out. The dragon soul died, leaving a lot of ownerless souls. Compared with the pure golden body, the growth of the soul power was the most important. Once one's spirit power grew, it would cause one's overall strength to start recovering and even soar. Therefore, compared with the cultivation of the indestructible body, Han Fei wanted to make up for the loss of his soul power more. When the blue soul fire returned to his head, Han Fei clearly felt that the power of his soul was increasing. However, he also discovered that the dragon essence chi outside was continuously gathering and automatically wrapping around him like a large cocoon. In this way, Han Fei's body couldn't bear the force anymore. No. Such surging energy must not be wasted. We have to send some into the fixed sea map. Well then. In the sea quelling painting. Bai Suzhen's family was currently in Earth 9's territory. This family had never seen a land creature before. In the Yao summoning tower, had they ever thought that in this world, there would actually be such a mystical place? Zhang Yao and the snake demon both felt that this was probably the most comfortable days they had lived in all these years. Bai Suzhen didn't feel anything. She had a cold personality. Although she was curious about the small animals in this world, these animals were too weak. She had no interest in them. When the Life Queen entered this place, she already knew where it was. Because she knew that Bai Suzhen was the reincarnation of the Water Fairy, the Life Queen slowly approached the Water Fairy as a hermit expert in the sea-quelling painting. For this, the Life Queen threw the punishing saber out of his thatched cottage. The punishing saber ran to accompany the fire seed bitterly. The Life Queen occupied the thatched cottage on the high mountain. At this moment, Bai Suzhen was standing under the peach tree, talking to the thatched cottage. Bai Suzhen asked, "Is the growth rate of the demonic plant clan really so high?" The Life Queen replied, "The demonic plant clan is probably the longest living creature in this world. You are talented, have an ancient species, and have a body of flesh and blood today. In the future, you will definitely be able to cultivate both. Don't lose sight of the other." Just as the Life Queen and the others were talking, Han Fei's voice suddenly appeared in the sea-quelling painting. "Tree Spirit, Punishing Saber. Listen, I'm going to send a batch of energy in. Eat hard. Don't slack off. Eat hard. If you can't finish it, clear this world. Senior Zhang Yao, Bai Suzhen, you are destined to meet me. Eat hard too." The Tree Spirit and the others quickly responded, "Yes, Master." Zhang Yao cupped his hands. "Thank you, Brother Han." The Life Queen was slightly taken aback. "How many batches of energy are you going to send in? Let so many people eat it? Eat as much as you can?" In the thatched cottage, the Life Queen's voice was indifferent. "What about me?" Han Fei was stunned and immediately said, "Of course you can eat as much as you want. What's mine is yours, isn't it?" Han Fei was a little speechless. As long as the Life Queen didn't change her way of addressing him, he couldn't call her his junior sister. Han Fei thought, to forge iron, one has to be strong. I should make a breakthrough as soon as possible, even if it's just becoming a venerable. He was also a big step away from becoming a king. Of course, Han Fei also knew that his growth speed was already terrifying enough. If it was any faster, it would really be a bit abnormal. Swish, swish, the entire sea-quelling painting began to emit terrifying energy. The dragon origin chi circulated in this world, as if it were free. At first, it was just a little power wandering in the sea-quelling painting. However, half an hour later, all the plants and ordinary creatures in the sea-quelling painting began to make breakthroughs. Half an hour later, the plants in the sea-quelling painting grew crazily. The Tree Spirit and the other four stood proudly in the void and began to swallow crazily. Zhang Yao and Bai Suzhen were also surprised. What's going on? Such terrifying energy was thrown in as if it were free. Who on earth was Han Fei? Even the Life Queen was a little stunned. This was not normal natural energy, nor was it chaotic energy. It had nothing to do with chaotic energy. This was a brand new kind of energy. Where did Han Fei get such a huge amount of energy? The Life Queen knew very well what Han Fei was capable of. It must be because Han Fei couldn't eat it himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have channeled this energy into the sea-quelling painting. Unfortunately, the Life Queen in the sea-quelling painting was just a bit of soul and couldn't absorb much. At this moment, the Life Queen suddenly said, "That's enough. The spiritual energy in the painting is limited. If you want to absorb the energy with the creatures, you also need a lot of spiritual energy and spiritual spring. Now, the spiritual energy here is already very thin. If you put more energy in, all the living beings here will explode and die because of too much energy." Outside, Han Fei was having a good time. He didn't know how much dragon origin chi there was. Anyway, he already felt that the amount of dragon origin chi had decreased a lot compared to the beginning of the first day. The demon purification pot was absorbing, so was the sea-quelling painting, so was his absorption, so it was much slower. Hearing the Life Queen's words, Han Fei glanced at Forge the Universe and found that there was only a little more than 1,000,000 caddies of spiritual spring left. Seeing this, Han Fei's heart suddenly tightened. Am I so poor again? 1,000,000 caddies of spiritual spring was more than 1,000,000,000 points of spiritual energy. However, Han Fei usually got money like water, and he could reach the peak of his life by robbing casually. But now, when he fought with Zhang Xiaotian for the heavenly tribulation just now, he consumed nearly half of the resources. Then, when he swallowed the dragon origin chi, he consumed a lot of spiritual energy to make a breakthrough, which led to the lack of spiritual spring. Han Fei gritted his teeth, and with a thought, he only left 500,000 caddies of spiritual spring for himself and sent the rest into the sea quelling painting. At this time, the ownerless souls outside hadn't been swallowed yet. At this time, it was not suitable for him to continue to cultivate the indestructible body, let alone make a breakthrough. Han Fei could only try to stuff them into the sea quelling painting. Swish, swish. When a huge amount of spiritual energy flowed into the sea quelling painting, the corners of the raw rice queen's mouth twitched slightly, and she thought to herself, "This B***starred is really rich and capricious." She said, "Not enough. If I want the creatures here to be the same as the outside world, I'm afraid I'll need 10 times more spiritual energy. Even if they used it sparingly, it would only last them for 1 day, provided that they couldn't continue to send energy inside. Otherwise, it can only last for half an hour at most." Han Fei was speechless. "Okay, got it." Seeing that the sea quelling painting couldn't be stuffed, Han Fei thought, how long has it been since Forge the Universe was opened? Since the sea quelling painting couldn't use up this huge amount of energy for the time being, he could just stuff it into Forge the Universe first. The fish dragon king, who had become a millennium snapper, was really like a salted fish recently. Han Fei didn't let her out, so she lay on the ground, seeming to be recalling the past. Suddenly, she saw that everything around her went dark and she couldn't see anything. The fish dragon king asked, "Han Fei, what are you doing? What are you panicking for? There are some things you can't see. Stay here." Tua, the spiritual spring rolled up like a storm, and the purest spiritual energy filled Forge the Universe. Now it was different from before. In the past, Han Fei used tens of thousands of points of spiritual energy. At most, he used hundreds of thousands of points of spiritual energy. Now it was hundreds of millions of points of spiritual energy. Therefore, Han Fei directly prepared 100 million points of spiritual energy for this expansion. While the spiritual energy was consumed, the dragon energy was poured into Forge the Universe again. Another half an hour passed, and Han Fei didn't know how many hours had passed. In short, the sea quelling painting had been completely closed, and he couldn't send any more energy in. The demon purification pot was still absorbing, which solved many problems for Han Fei. Forge the Universe expanded to a radius of 5,000 meters. The larger the scope, the more spiritual energy Han Fei consumed. When it expanded to a radius of 5,000 meters, the actual consumption of spiritual energy was 150 million points. Usually, Han Fei wouldn't panic at all. This little bit of spiritual energy was not even enough to deduce a major technique. But not now. Now, Han Fei's spiritual spring was scarce again. Plus all the spiritual fruits and spiritual energy he had, the total amount was only 500 or 600 million points. He needed energy to cultivate the indestructible body and make a breakthrough, so he had to save some. But fortunately, at this moment, the ownerless soul had almost been devoured. Han Fei felt that his soul had been greatly improved. Although it wouldn't return to its previous peak, it had definitely skyrocketed. At this time, Han Fei thought, now I should continue to cultivate the indestructible body with the help of these gradually diminishing dragon energy. Once I cultivate the indestructible body, I need to use the apocalyptic divine technique. Once I use the apocalyptic divine technique, I have to consume vitality. From the vitality I gave to the old turtle at the beginning to being consumed in a mess, I'm afraid I've lost 700 or 800 years of vitality. Even if all the people on the island were sucked dry, it wouldn't help. After I go out, I have to find a way to kill people and devour their vitality. Alas! What can I do if I can't use up the dragon energy? Chapter 1351. Standing before the peculiar gate, Zhang Xiaotian immediately sensed that the amount of draconic qi in the surroundings had increased. At this moment, the entire road was filled with dragon essence qi. Chong Lulu exclaimed, "What a powerful force! Eat it!" Inside the gate, Han Fei injected some energy into Forge the Universe. However, how could the space of Forge the Universe be compared to the sea-quelling painting? The sea-quelling painting spanned tens of thousands of kilometers. Forge the Universe was only 10 kilometers in radius. After a while, Forge the Universe was full of all kinds of spiritual plants, filling up the existing space. Fortunately, the ownerless souls around Han Fei didn't affect his cultivation anymore. So, Han Fei continued to cultivate the indestructible body. This time, Han Fei was even more painful. He really felt that his skull had been crushed into ashes, and he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. However, once Han Fei stopped, a large amount of dragon energy would still drill into his body. If he was careless, he would be blown up by the dragon energy. The old turtle said, "Stick to your belief and try to understand your own path. The pain of the body is nothing to be afraid of." Han Fei gritted his teeth, his eyes red, and thought to himself, "If I could understand the true meaning of the belief, I would have done it a long time ago. Who would want to be in so much pain? You old turtle, it's easy for you to say. I don't believe that you easily understood the belief back then." Apocalypse Divine Technique. Han Fei performed the Apocalypse Divine Technique again. It seemed that every time he performed it, his pain was reduced a little. It was like smoking marijuana. He was almost addicted to it. Han Fei thought to himself, "If I can walk on this path, maybe my body won't be in pain anymore." However, when Han Fei thought of this, he suddenly realized something. When the great path of heavenly enlightenment was established, did the Creator have this mentality and let the future generations walk on his path and eventually become his leak? With that in mind, Han Fei made up his mind not to use the apocalyptic divine technique anymore in the following days. As for how to endure the bone-crushing pain, he might as well burn his essence blood. Although it also consumed vitality, it was much less than the consumption of the heaven-awakening divine art. After all, the apocalypse divine technique consumed vitality. Fusion. In an instant, Han Fei used the fusion technique that had always been of little use. As an inherited secret technique of Little Black and Little White, this fusion technique had never been useful. However, at this moment, with the effect of burning essence blood, Han Fei's strength became stronger and he could resist some pain. Han Fei asked, "Son, can you control Daddy's body?" At this moment, Han Fei suddenly remembered that every time he fused, he would be very crazy and sometimes he couldn't control himself. At that moment, he didn't seem to feel any pain in his mind. Han Fei didn't forcibly control this body with the power of his soul. Sure enough, Little Black's consciousness immediately filled the fish head's head after the transformation. This feeling was very strange. Han Fei seemed to have become a part of the consciousness of this body. Although he knew that the physical body was in extreme pain at the moment, when he was in a completely mental state, he suddenly found that the pain was greatly relieved. It seemed that his spirit and body had been completely separated. 2 hours. 2 hours. While Han Fei was practicing the indestructible body art, the river of blood and qi in the outside world was already chaotic. Maybe because of the collapse of space, some rules in this small world seemed to be collapsing. The earth was shaking, and there were fiery meteors falling from the sky. The whole world was in a doomsday scene. In the river of blood and qi, the blood water suddenly decreased. The blood aura on the surface of the river and the clumps of mist were also diminishing. On the contrary, the number of blood toads increased. Some heavenly talents who were still on the river suddenly found that there were more boats on this river of blood and chi. These boats seemed to appear out of thin air, and no one knew where they came from. At this moment, most of the heavenly talents had come to the river. In the river of blood energy, these people were like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each displaying their own abilities. Some people controlled their boats to flee. Some people's boats were surrounded by blood toads. In desperation, they found 2 or 3 boats not far away, so they jumped to them and escaped death. Of course, some people were stained by blood toads. After being poisoned, they could only hold on for about half an hour before their bodies began to rot. In this doomsday scene, the real heavenly talents of the various forces were soon selected. After all, at the juncture of life and death, one's potential would be maximized. The Life Queen and the others were also shocked by what they saw. Even though this island wasn't that big, it was still far beyond their expectations, even though it had been raided several times by several forces. At this moment, life and death were on the line. As the apocalypse descended, in this moment of life and death, the various prodigies used all of their trump cards and trump cards. At this moment, everyone's foundation was revealed to him. Although the outside world was in chaos, in front of the giant gate crack. This was the 8th time that someone had made a breakthrough on this road. That's right, everyone who came to this door today had basically broken through at least once. Obviously, the frequency of this kind of breakthrough was a little too high, to the point that it was shocking. Although some people had reached the peak of the sea spirit realm or the peak of the law enforcer realm, there was still a gap between them. Today, they still felt that they had made a small breakthrough, which made their foundation more solid. For example, Zhang Xiaotian had just passed the 4-9 King tribulation. Originally, he should still be consolidating his cultivation. However, at this time, he was devouring the dragon origin chi while consolidating his cultivation. In just a short period of 10 or 12 hours, he felt that his foundation was already very solid. Even so, Zhang Xiaotian didn't look happy at all. His cultivation was stabilized very quickly, but what about Han Fei? Han Fei managed to cross the 600-meter limit, so the benefits he would get would definitely be much more than what he could get. With that thought in mind, Zhang Xiaotian felt as if he was going to war with the heavens. After a long time, Zhang Xiaotian suddenly felt that the amount of dragon origin chi around him began to slowly decline. He couldn't help but be shocked. Is this power going to disappear? Has it been absorbed by Han Fei? Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaotian was even more anxious. The opportunity was right in front of him. Was he going to regret it for the rest of his life just because he didn't dare to take it? He had reincarnated and even had the courage to be reborn, but he didn't even have the courage to break into a secret realm? Zhang Xiaotian reached the limit of 600 meters with a single step. However, as soon as his feet touched the ground, he heard a bang, and his entire body directly fell to the ground. Clatter! Zhang Xiaotian's octopus body was directly pressed out. 4 octopuses, their defense and ability to deflect attacks were extremely strong. However, at this moment, Zhang Xiaotian finally felt the pain that Han Fei had just now. Is this the power that a human can withstand? This was a completely different kind of pressure compared to the pressure from before. Zhang Xiaotian felt that a heavy fog appeared around him, and his eyes subconsciously looked into the depths of the fog. In the end, he saw a figure that looked a bit like a figure from a painting. Just a gaze from the other party was not something that he could bear. At that moment, Zhang Xiaotian was shocked. Even in his previous life, he had never met such a terrifying expert. Behind Zhang Xiaotian, the group of people also saw Zhang Xiaotian's miserable appearance, and then thought of Han Fei's previous extreme pain. They all had a feeling that Zhang Xiaotian was probably still a little worse than Han Fei. Especially Prawn Yue and Umbrella 7, They realized that from now on, there was one person in the Shuemu heaven that they couldn't mess with, and that was Han Fei. They all knew that Zhang Xiaotian had secretly reserved his strength. However, even so, he was still not a match for them. It was already obvious that Han Fei had passed the same short circuit and the same difficulty, but Zhang Xiaotian seemed to be even more miserable than Han Fei. At this moment, Chong Lulu had been wriggling all the way forward and had come to a point of more than 400 meters, close to 500 meters. It turned out that as long as one was willing to persist on this path, they would still gain something. The only huge obstacle was the 600-meter place. Chong Lulu said, "Chong Xiaochong, Limelight 7, hurry up. The further we go, the more power we have. My insect body has greatly improved, and I will definitely be able to pass the tribulation when I go out this time." Chong Xiaochong said, "You animal, why are you climbing so fast? Damn it. This pressure is enough to scare someone to death." Chong Lulu remembered Han Fei's figure and couldn't help but say, "Do you know what is fast? Han Fei has already run away. As a heavenly talent, we can't be timid." Crack. Everyone thought that someone had made a breakthrough. However, all of a sudden, everyone raised their heads and saw that a crack had appeared on the giant gate. Huh! They didn't know if Zhang Xiaotian was lucky or what. At this moment the gate cracked. This allowed him to breathe a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he really felt that he would have been crushed to death here. However, at the place where the 95 tributaries of the rivers of blood and energy converged, the 3 small vines between Han Fei's eyebrows were still devouring crazily, and the vine leaves were getting more and more dazzling. However, the dragon origin chi suddenly began to plummet, and the ownerless souls had all been absorbed. Han Fei didn't know to what extent his indestructible body had been cultivated. He only felt that his skull was shining brightly at this moment. The spiritual spring in Forge the Universe, if not counting the spiritual fruits, was less than 200 million points. It could be seen how difficult it was to cultivate the 5th level of the indestructible body. This was just the indestructible body, not part of the soul cultivation of the indestructible overlord body. By then, Han Fei felt that he wouldn't be qualified to cultivate if he didn't have enough spiritual spring. In Han Fei's sea of consciousness, because the dragon shadow was completely destroyed, the demon purification pot flew up from the old turtle's body again. This made the old turtle heave a long sigh of relief. "Damn, I'm so scared." The old turtle finally realized that this demon purification pot was very magical. Did he want to run out when it was unprepared? It was unlikely that he would be able to do so. In the future, if there was a chance, he should still build a good relationship with Han Fei. This was the safest strategy. Blub, blub, crack, crack. Han Fei found that the big scarlet cocoon around him was getting thinner and thinner. It seemed that the so-called dragon origin chi was gone after all. Han Fei was even a little shocked. How strong was this dragon when it was alive? He cultivated the indestructible body, swallowed power, repaired his soul, developed Forge the Universe, the demon purification pot absorbed it, and the sea-quelling painting stored it. But he couldn't swallow it completely. As a matter of fact, Han Fei had calculated many times in his heart that all the places that he could absorb energy had been filled. Even his indestructible golden body was about to be completed. The energy of the dragon origin chi just disappeared. Even so, the remaining dragon origin chi didn't completely disappear, and there should be a lot left. However, this big cocoon was no longer enough to bind him, and there wouldn't be infinite energy drilling into his body. Then he looked at his feet, under the dragon's head, and tentacles stretched out from a cloud of blood mist. Who could it be if not Little Fatty? However, at this moment, Little Fatty seemed to have changed a little. Did its tentacles turn red? Crack. Suddenly, Han Fei saw the ground crack, and the tributaries of the bloody river began to flow backward. Immediately, Han Fei thought to himself, "Not good, this place is going to collapse." First update. Asking for votes, End of this chapter. Chapter 1352. Han Fei thought that although there wasn't much dragon origin chi left, his indestructible body should be completed soon. As long as he completed the golden bones of the skull, his indestructible body should be completed. But this place was about to collapse. Han Fei glanced at Forge the Universe again, only to find that the spiritual spring inside was almost exhausted. His complete indestructible body seemed to be lacking just a little bit. After hesitating for a while, Han Fei stopped hesitating. Although it was only a little short, he was always stuck at the last step when he cultivated the indestructible body. Every time, he either calcined it with the alien fire, deduced the void fishing art to attract lightning bolts, or passed a tribulation. It seemed that with the dragon origin chi, he almost completed the 5th level of the indestructible body in one go. He still needed an opportunity to complete the last step. Only in this way could he achieve greater mastery. Then, Han Fei took a look at his information again. Han Fei was shocked by what he saw. Owner Han Fei level greater than 76, Intermediate Explorer, Spiritual Energy 190,000/190,000 Spiritual Power 25682/25682 Perception Range greater than 3,200 kilometers, Power greater than 602 waves, First Spiritual Heritage Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Level 65, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened Main Art Sky Stealing Technique Level 6 of Void Fishing Venerable Level Divine Quality. Han Fei's first attention was naturally his soul power. Previously, his divine soul power was close to 30,000 points. He thought that it would be an extremely long process to make up for his soul power. After all, he swallowed the new consciousness that was born in the water fairy's body, and the total increase in his soul power was only about 6,000 points. But now it was just a dragon shadow. Besides, a lot of the soul power from its self-explosion dissipated in the void. However, just this dragon shadow alone had increased his spiritual strength by nearly 9,000 points. He had instantly recovered more than half of his spiritual strength. Han Fei firmly believed that if he cultivated for a while and visualized the god-scaring painting, it shouldn't be a problem for him to recover to his previous peak soul power. The increase of 40,000 points of spiritual energy wasn't a big deal. Originally, his spiritual energy reserve had dropped from 180,000 points to 150,000 points. At this moment, it was equivalent to breaking through 2 levels and walking on the path of 3 levels. It was normal for him to replenish his spiritual energy. Even so, Han Fei still felt that it was not enough. After all, a peak intermediate explorer was different from a beginner intermediate explorer. At the level of an explorer, one step at a time was like a whole new world. Han Fei certainly understood this. As for the range of perception, this time, it was restored to 3,200 miles. That was normal. After all, he had already reached 3,600 miles. Now that he had advanced 2 levels in a row, and his soul power had been replenished by so much, it would be strange if it was lower than 3,000. In terms of strength, the terrifying figure of more than 600 waves really gave Han Fei a fright. This was already an extremely shocking number. It wasn't that Han Fei didn't know what an explorer was. Ordinary explorers, when they were advanced explorers, before they reached the peak, could only summon around 500 waves. Geniuses usually wouldn't reach 800. Unless they were peerless heavenly talents, it was possible for them to reach 1,000 waves. Would an advanced explorer have the power of 1,000 waves? Han Fei had never heard of it. But for a peak-level explorer, the increase in strength at that time was a bit terrifying. As the saying went, if one's strength doesn't reach 1,000 waves, one can't reach the peak. If he wanted to become a semi-venerable, 1,000 waves was just the beginning. At this moment, Han Fei was only a peak-level intermediate explorer. Now, Han Fei was full of fat. This was a sign that the energy in his body hadn't been completely digested. If he could refine all of this energy, his overall strength would increase even further. If he became a golden body cultivator and became an advanced explorer, it was almost certain that Han Fei's combat power would surpass 1,000 waves. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, how many waves can one's strength reach to be called a semi-venerable?" The old turtle said, "It has nothing to do with strength. Semi-venerable is only related to the Great Way. Those who have entered the Great Way can be called semi-venerable at any time. If you have to measure it with strength, more than 1,000 waves. If you are a pure body-refining powerhouse, I'm afraid it will take more than 2,000 waves." More than 1,000 waves to be called a semi-venerable? That's not high. Humph, the old turtle said. Do you know that with the power of the Great Way, how can strength be measured simply by strength? Unless your strength is several times that of others, the amount of strength ultimately depends on the strength of your own Great Way. At that time, you won't be able to use any secret methods. It's not that there are no secret methods of that level, but secret methods always have to pay a price. Just like how you borrowed strength from this emperor, how could this emperor lend strength to you for free? It's all for a purpose. Hearing this, Han Fei quickly looked at his secret method. With the current devil transformation ability, even doubling his strength was a bit hard to come by. As for the Beast King art, Han Fei glanced at it and found that the strength bonus was only 3 times. Although the Beast King art, in a sense, could not be regarded as a secret method, it should be a kind of innate ability of this race. It was already very impressive that he could achieve this effect by forcibly learning it. At least, at this moment, the Beast King art could still provide 3 times the strength. If he broke through the current realm, Han Fei was almost sure that Devil Change would basically be useless. The power provided by the Beast King art could only be doubled at most. Even the amplification provided by the agility of wind was greatly reduced. It was not because the agility of wind was a secret method, but because Han Fei's strength was growing and his basic speed was also increasing. On the other hand, there was a limit to the speed that the phantom glass wings could provide. Otherwise, it would be ridiculous for a venerable one to be able to increase their speed by several times with the phantom glass wings. Therefore, Han Fei seemed to have improved a lot in all aspects. In fact, if all the power, including secret methods, was taken into account, he was probably not much stronger than when he had just become an intermediate explorer. Of course, the benefits of the improvement of his own strength could not be explained by such simple data. After all, secret methods could not be maintained for a long time, but his own strength could be used at will. Crack, crack, crack. The ground cracked again, and Little Earth's fat head stretched out of the red mist. Bam! Part of the gigantic dragon's skeleton collapsed. Han Fei broke out of the big cocoon of dragon origin chi and felt that his mental state had never been better. His body was 2 or 3 times fatter, and he lost about 800 years of vitality, but his strength had soared a lot. It was possible that he was a little unsure at the beginning. Everything else was fine. The fat body just couldn't absorb all the energy. With his current strength and growth rate, he would be able to return to his original state in 2 to 3 days if he was fast, or 2 to 3 months if he was slow. Han Fei wanted to store the dragon origin chi, but the dragon origin chi was dissipating. Han Fei had a feeling that this place would collapse before he could store the dragon origin chi. The old turtle also roared, "Let's go. The heavenly secrets here are chaotic, and it's extremely difficult to perceive. You have to find the door here." Han Fei said, "Where there is water, there is a way out. From here, a total of 95 blood pools are separated. Why is a tributary missing?" Han Fei clearly remembered that it was 95 before. How did it become 94? The old turtle said, "Well, maybe one of them was swallowed by you." Han Fei didn't believe it. One of them was swallowed by him? Was the blood in the blood pool drinkable? However, Han Fei didn't think too much and just said, "There are so many tributaries. There must be one that can go out." The old turtle said, "It's not good to waste too much time in the blood pool. You know, when you came in, it was only a blink of an eye." Glancing at little Fatty that had just been reborn, Han Fei recalled it with a thought. Han Fei said, "I have to run. But there's one more thing I have to do." The old turtle asked, "What?" Swish. Han Fei had already flashed out, grabbing and holding the huge dragon bones and shouting crazily, "Collect, collect, collect!" The old turtle. The dragon bones were 3,000 meters long, but Forge the Universe was indeed big enough for him to put them in. However, the old turtle was a little speechless. You want treasures, but you don't even want your life? Besides, are these still treasures? After tens of thousands of years of erosion, these dragon bones probably had no blood left. These bones couldn't even be made into ultra-quality divine weapons, not to mention sea-quelling bizarre treasures. However, how could Han Fei's opinion be the same as the old turtle's? The good things in your eyes are at the level of sea-quelling bizarre treasures. The good things in my eyes, as long as they can reach the level of semi-divine weapons, are all F*King good things. In an instant, Han Fei used the close-distance technique and his figure flashed quickly between the dragon bones. Dragon heads, dragon claws, dragon ribs, dragon cervical vertebrae, they were all crazily stuffed into Forge the Universe. Although Forge the Universe could fit, it was estimated that there wouldn't be much space left after this dragon was stuffed in. Bam! 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 Crack! Crack! Even though Han Fei was fast enough, he still couldn't keep up with the speed of the collapse of this place. He had only collected half of the dragon bones, and a large area of the dome had already collapsed. Around him, cracks appeared one after another in the void. The old turtle shouted, "Not good! You're right. This is not behind that door at all. This is an independent small world. Now you've swallowed all the power in the small world. This place is about to be annihilated." Han Fei asked, "What should I do? There are 94 tributaries. Which one is closer?" The old turtle was speechless. In this case, one is to resist the space turbulence and return to the door. Another is, as you said, since the source of the blood pool is here, we can find any tributary and get out. Han Fei was still collecting the dragon bones while looking for a way. He didn't believe that it would be easy to get out of the blood pool tributary. This tributary must be extremely long. If he went out from here, he might as well. Han Fei suddenly stood on a dragon bone, and an idea flashed in his mind. What do 95 tributaries and 94 tributaries mean? 9 and 5, the dragon flies in the sky, and the dragon sees the Lord. What about 9 and 4? Now it's not in the sky, but in the abyss, implying that the dragon is hidden in the abyss, the dragon is hidden in the abyss. Han Fei seemed to remember that this number didn't correspond to this word. But in any case, didn't this give him a reason? The source of this river of blood is actually right below the blood pool? If so, Han Fei stretched out one hand and drew an array with one hand. After dozens of strokes, a teleportation array appeared. The old turtle was puzzled. "Where are you going to teleport it?" Han Fei smiled. "Above my head." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1353. When he was carving the teleportation array, Han Fei had actually made two preparations. If the way out was really as he expected, then he should be able to directly leave this small world and return to that place in front of the door. But if the way out was wrong, or if he fell into the blood pool, he would activate the invincible will and the law enforcement golden body in an instant. Then, he would instantly open the void and escape from the void. For others this might be difficult. However, Han Fei felt that his physique had been strong enough to make his hair stand on end. In a short period of time, it shouldn't be a big problem for him to resist the void turbulence. Han Fei looked at the big cracks and void cracks in all directions. Even many thick dragon bones were entangled in. It was a pity that half of the dragon bone was lost. If he still had some time, he would never allow such an ultra-quality material to be left here to be covered in dust. Swish! Han Fei stepped into the teleportation array, only to feel that the void in front of him was chaotic. In the teleportation space, many cracks appeared in an instant. Just when Han Fei thought he would be involved in the void turbulence, his eyes suddenly lit up. He actually came out, and the place where he came out was not somewhere else, but in front of the gate. The fact that he could appear here only meant one thing, that was, the distance between his small world and here was not very far. Han Fei appeared here just to try to teleport here. At this moment, he was only more than 200 meters away from the giant gate. Gotcha! As soon as Han Fei appeared, he heard a crisp sound like thunder. Looking up, he saw that a crack suddenly appeared on the giant gate in front of him. Wait! Han Fei suddenly discovered that there seemed to be something wrong with the place where the crack appeared. When he took a closer look, it didn't seem to be a crack, but a curved door gap. All of this happened at the moment when Han Fei came out. Behind him, Chong Lulu roared, "Han Fei, where did you come from? Run! This place is going to collapse, and the Blood River is going to overflow." Han Fei felt that although the pressure of this giant gate was not small, it was much weaker than when he came. He didn't know if it was because of his great improvement in strength, or because there was a crack in the door. Han Fei looked back and saw that Zhang Xiaotian was lying 200 meters away in his original form. Han Fei knew how it felt. It must be the feeling of being crushed to death. However, as cracks began to appear on the giant gate, the pressure emanating from Zhang Xiaotian's body was alleviated. At this time, he could also stand up with difficulty. Behind Zhang Xiaotian, rubble littered the ground. The roof had collapsed, and boulders were falling from the sky. Chong Lulu and the others were looking at Han Fei nervously, trying to run forward. However, his strength did not allow him to do so. Even if they wanted to run, they couldn't. Behind them, the waters of the blood pool were flowing upwards. Looking at the others, some of them were able to easily return to the ship because they had controlled the ship rather late and had only set foot on this road for a short time. Some people were even watching the show. There were some who did not panic at all. For example, Shrimpy Yue and the others were still devouring the dragon essence chi. Han Fei knew that these people must have put away the boat. Han Fei shouted, "Where are your boats?" 7 said, "We came in a hurry. We confiscated them." Han Fei's face darkened. What the hell is wrong with them? It's really worrying. He didn't know how his junior sister felt at ease letting these guys come over. Han Fei looked at the blood pool that was still more than 200 meters away from them, and then he heard the giant gate crack and continue to crack. The billowing smoke and dust dispersed, and Han Fei seemed to see a ray of light through the gap. Han Fei gritted his teeth and said telepathically, "You three wait a moment. I'll be back soon." Chong Lulu and the others thought to themselves, "What the F***ck is going on? Where are you going now?" Zhang Xiaotian and the others who were watching the show were shocked to see that Han Fei was still trying to rush to the end of the road. Squeak! Squeak! The huge stone gate was indeed opening. Zhang Xiaotian and the others also realized what was going on. However, the gap was only slightly exposed. They could only see white and nothing else. Fuse! Han Fei moved another 100 meters. When he felt that his feet were soft, he activated the fusion state. In his dantian, the Dao seed was activated, and Han Fei thought, "I can see behind the gate." This was a self-deception, his own prophecy. However, this was Han Fei's Dao, a special ability to deceive the heavens and the earth. Therefore, when the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, the white light in Han Fei's eyes gradually dissipated. Han Fei seemed to see a cloud behind the gate. Huh? The sky? However, this picture was soon penetrated, and Han Fei seemed to see a huge waterfall falling from the sky. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the Milky Way. It seemed that birds were swimming in the sky, and human figures were floating. Han Fei looked up, and suddenly saw the stars shining brightly. Someone was facing the sky. As if sensing something, that person turned around to take a look. Puff! Han Fei didn't see his face at all. At the moment when the person looked back, he had forgotten what the other party looked like. He could only vaguely remember a plain gaze. Han Fei stepped back, vomiting blood crazily. At the center of his eyebrows, the demon purification pot trembled, as if it had resisted a huge attack for Han Fei. The old turtle didn't understand and immediately asked, "Did you see something behind the gate?" "That's impossible. Even I couldn't see it." "How could you?" Han Fei vomited blood and hurriedly cast the holy light technique on himself. Then he gasped, "I didn't see anything, but I vomited blood." Han Fei thought to himself, "I really didn't see anything. Except for a waterfall, a galaxy, and a vague figure, there was nothing else." However, Han Fei was sure that the person was definitely not dead yet. He even looked back at him. What kind of place was behind this door? What kind of person would have the ability to stand in the middle of a starry sky? Zhang Xiaotian was slightly surprised. Was there another obstacle ahead? He thought that Han Fei couldn't have seen anything from the gap of the giant gate, because it was just a gap. He thought that Han Fei must want to enter the giant gate, but he had to pass another obstacle, and Han Fei failed this hurdle. That was why he was vomiting blood crazily. Crack! Crack! At this moment, before the gate was opened, the dome of the mountain above his head seemed to be unable to bear a certain force and was full of cracks. Dum! 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 Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! A lot of boulders were smashing down. In the blood pool, many blood demons were shouting, "Retreat!" Prawn Yue roared, "Xiaotian, let's go!" Umbrella 7 roared, "We'll always have opportunities again." Prawn Yue and Umbrella 7 retreated until they reached the edge of the blood pool, before they took out boats and boarded them. Zhang Xiaotian stared at Han Fei for a moment before rolling on the ground. He retreated to the 600 m mark and quickly retreated. Han Fei saw that he indeed had to run. If he didn't run, he would be screwed if the void turbulence appeared here too. Even if the void turbulence didn't appear here, as long as the mountain completely collapsed, the blood pool would cover this place. Even if he took out his boat, would he be able to escape? That was also a problem. However, he didn't panic. Winning in the midst of chaos was his style of doing things. Bam! Han Fei took a step forward and ran to where Chong Lulu was as if he were sprinting. Hiss! Seeing Han Fei's action, everyone from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, the White Shell Royal City, and the Shuemu Heaven were all dumbfounded. Are we really on the same path? We're moving forward bit by bit. How can we be like them? He took one big step at a time. In just a few seconds, Han Fei rushed to Chong Lulu and the others, grabbed Chong Liuliu's big horn with one hand, and kicked Chong Lulu, who was retreating, into the blood pool. And with his other hand, he grabbed the beak and quickly retreated. With a thought from Han Fei, a boat appeared, and the 4 of them returned to the boat amidst the falling rubble. Chilla! As soon as he got on the boat, the arrays under Han Fei's feet popped up one after another. None of the falling stones or the splashing blood pool could splash on Han Fei's boat. Han Fei said, "Hurry up, push the boat." Hoop! 7 flapped his wings, and Chong Lulu also spread their wings. Han Fei waved a big hand made of spiritual energy, and the 4 of them worked together to push the boat up. Bam! 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 Unlike others, 7, Chong Lulu were all flapping their wings, which might cause ripples on the surface of the blood pool, but they wouldn't blow up the surface of the blood pool. But Han Fei was different. No matter how big the noise this B***starred could cause, the boat sailed as fast as thunder. Chong Lulu shouted, "Han Fei, stop. You'll attract more bloodworms." Yes, Chong Lulu didn't know about bloodworms. He thought it was also a kind of worm. 7 said, "That's a unique creature of the blood pool. It's very scary. Such a fierce action will attract their attention." In the distance, Umbrella 7 of the White Shell Royal City sneered. "Han Fei is a bit too stupid." On the Blood Demon's side, some creatures were also speechless, but they said excitedly, "Very good, let Han Fei lead the people of the Shuemu Heaven to their death. Let's go." Han Fei sneered and shouted, "Everyone, hand over the sun-moon shells you have. If they're worth less than 1,000,000 spiritual springs, we'll fight you to the death." Everyone. Chong Lulu and the others. Han Fei pushed the boat and ran fast. Not only that, he began to blast out countless golden fist marks. Not to hit other people's boats, but the blood river around them. Prawn Yue shouted, "Han Fei, are you crazy? You will attract an army of bloodworms. By then, no one will get any benefit." A blood demon was furious. "Han Fei, do you want to block our way alone?" Han Fei sneered. "Why didn't you leave just now? Are you still waiting to watch the show? Bah, do you think my show is so good? Today, except for the 2 ships that have already slipped away, pay up for the rest." Someone thought of something and said in a low voice, "Take the other tributaries." Han Fei grinned. "Do you think I'm joking with you?" Two small spirit gathering arrays emerged one after another. When hundreds of small arrays emerged, a large spirit gathering array condensed in midair. At this moment, Han Fei finally realized what it felt like when old Jiang stepped on the big array and suppressed the void. He was too pretentious. Spiritual energy was gathering, and dozens of spiritual fruits exploded. For a moment, the blood pool surged, and bloodworms had already emerged. Chong Lulu and Chong Xiaochong shrank their heads. "Oh no, oh no! Han Fei, the bloodworms are coming." Ah Chi tilted his head and looked at Han Fei. His IQ was higher than the 2 worms, and he knew that Han Fei must have something to do this. Han Fei said, "Come on, Han Fei, invite the heavenly talents of the White Shell Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City to hell." Chapter 1354. All the heavenly talents here were stunned by Han Fei's behavior. "This place is about to collapse. Don't you know how to run? Why are you still in the mood to rob us? If it were an ordinary place, it wouldn't be a big deal if it collapsed. But here, the blood toads were surging like tides below, and the dome above was pressing down like a mountain. Originally, there were many ways to get out. Although these people didn't know that there were as many as 94 ways, they had all come from different ways. If they wanted to leave, it shouldn't be a problem as long as they avoided the crisis of the blood toads. But now, Han Fei was standing in front of them. He had attracted the spiritual energy in this place with the spirit gathering array and the spiritual fruits, and the blood toads were coming from all directions. Seeing this, everyone including Zhang Xiaotian felt that their blood was freezing. Did Han Fei want to die? Someone shouted, "Kill him! 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. Today Han Fei is trying to stop us. Let's let him know that he's not the only heavenly talent here." Zhang Xiaotian of the Baibei Royal City reached out and grabbed. "Let's have a try." Zhang Xiaotian knew that he couldn't kill Han Fei. However, with so many people working together, he might not be able to kill Han Fei. At the very least, it was not impossible for him to make Han Fei panic and take advantage of the chaos to escape. After all, he was the strongest of these people. Han Fei wouldn't leave himself here in the face of so many people, would he? That was simply unimaginable. As Zhang Xiaotian spoke, in the blink of an eye, the 9 bloody spears appeared again. Prawn Yue and Umbrella Chi attacked at the same time, shattering the void inch by inch. On the other side, the blood demons were chanting spells, and a large number of spells even enveloped the place where Han Fei was. There were also spells that caused the blood to surge and rise upside down. The Phoenix Head 7 shouted, "Han Fei, don't fight him." Looking at the overwhelming attacks coming at them, 7, Chong Lulu, and Chong Xiaochong were all dumbfounded. Even in the outside world, they wouldn't be able to resist such a terrifying attack. Chong Lulu also shouted, Han Fei, run! It's the same if we go out and rob him. Han Fei sneered. Are you sure? You can still snatch it if you go out? Chong Lulu, let me tell you, if you don't walk through the gates of hell, you won't know what it means to be fearless. After that, Han Fei chuckled with Snowmorn in his hand. I had an enemy who taught me a very powerful sword technique. Look at the sky-sealing sword tide. This was Sun Mu's trump card. Under normal circumstances, there were many people who could block such a powerful move. However, the blood toad was still surging above the pool of blood. The power of this move was even stronger than his 10,000 returning sabers. Han Fei drew an array with his sword, and the blood behind him surged out like huge waves. Of course, Han Fei didn't expect the sky-sealing sword tide to block so many powerful attacks. Zhang Xiaotian's 9 bloody spears should be enough to break the sky-sealing sword tide easily. However, this technique caused a huge commotion. With such a huge commotion, the blood pool became even more dangerous. Everyone wanted to leave, but there were only so many boats, and there were countless blood toads. No matter which way they chose, they would try their best to leave as long as they could. Boom! A sacrificing punch bombarded and shattered prawn yueis and umbrella cheese attacks. Of course, the sacrificing punch was mainly used to block the 9 bloody spears. Seeing that the spears were broken, Han Fei said casually, Now, I've only triggered part of it. There's such a large space here, and there are other ways that haven't been touched. As long as you pay, I promise I won't trouble you. Zhang Xiaotian clearly sensed that Han Fei had become much stronger. Previously, Han Fei's sacrificing punch could only resist the power of 5 spears at most. However, this time, the power of the 6th spear was easily broken through. Just like that, Han Fei clenched his fist and punched again. The long sword in his hand caused the blood sea to move again. Chong Lulu and the others were all dumbfounded. What kind of terrifying power did Han Fei have? How could he shatter so many attacks with his own strength? Under the sky-sealing sword tide, everything was in chaos and the blood pool was everywhere. The sword energy was like a tide, and among them, the blood toads were attacking. The blood toads were a law enforcer. No matter how weak they were still law enforcers. Under the siege of tens of millions of blood toads, how could these people resist? Not only that, Han Fei put away Snowmorn and a big bow appeared in his hand. Swish! Swish! Han Fei drew the bow and shot 5 arrows in one breath. Each arrow was terrifying. Those curses that were going to strangle Han Fei were directly shattered under the bombardment of the arrows. Someone exclaimed, How is it possible? How can he absorb spiritual energy so fast? Doesn't he need spiritual energy to shoot one arrow after another? Someone was shocked. He must have a way to temporarily store spiritual energy. Someone said, Let's escape together. There are many exits here. Can he seal all of them? Swish! Swish! Han Fei shot out a series of arrows without stopping. 1 breath. 2 breath. 3 breath. When Zhang Xiaotian realized that Han Fei was stronger and that he was no match for him, he stopped attacking but chose an exit with Prawn Yue and the others. Han Fei didn't bother with them at all. Zhang Xiaotian must have other trump cards. Besides, he couldn't kill them with the War Soul Bow technique. Therefore, Han Fei's arrows were like flying locusts. He only destroyed the enemies, not killed them. Some people could resist his destruction and had ways to deal with the blood toad. However, most people didn't. At this moment, Han Fei didn't stop for more than 10 seconds and shot out a series of arrows. Wherever those people's boats wanted to run, Han Fei's arrows would shoot them, making the waves of blood roll. At this moment, 3 boats of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City were blocked by Han Fei's arrows. There were a total of 6 people on these 3 fishing boats, and none of them escaped. Having no choice, the 3 of them tried their best to deal with Han Fei. One of them bombarded Han Fei's surroundings with curses, trying to make trouble for Han Fei. The other 2 were trying to open a way and rush into a random tributary. However, although it was a good idea, they didn't have the strongest person among them, nor did they use any special trump cards. In fact, even if they could fight as strong as advanced explorers, it wouldn't matter to Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei's strength was already far beyond that of ordinary advanced explorers. Even if he didn't use any secret techniques, few people below the peak level could defeat him. Han Fei roared, "Pay for your life. 1 sun moon shell for each of you. It's not expensive at all. Do you want to consider it?" A blood demon got up angrily, stepped in the air, and shot 3 beams of green light at Han Fei. Han Fei slightly narrowed his eyes. With his current eyesight, he could see through it at a glance. Judging from the sharpness of the 3 nails that could break the soul, they should be intermediate or advanced disposable divine weapons. Han Fei waved his hand and the infinity water was twisted into a piece. Ding ding ding, sounds of collisions were heard, and the long nails were sent flying. The blood demon's red veil was lifted, and he squeaked, and thousands of ink-like curses surged out of his body. The incantations were like restraining runes. Han Fei felt that the void around him was sealed, and poisonous things were drifting. Ha ha! The heavenly talent of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City is just SOSO. Han Fei roared and punched out with the sacrificing punch. With a puff, the woman vomited blood and retreated. The spell seal was also pierced by Han Fei with one blow. Han Fei waved his big hand, and the poisonous cloud seemed to be caught in his hand. Han Fei was cut 7 or 8 times by the void crack. However, he only left a few bloodstains, which was not a big deal. But at this moment, Han Fei's body appeared next to the blood demon. Someone shouted, "Not good! Sister Chow, retreat!" Retreat? Han Fei's voice was cold, and a kitchen knife appeared in his hand. In the field, silver light bloomed, and the blood demon was cut into 2 pieces by Han Fei. Han Fei reached out, grabbed her sun moon shell, and stuffed it into his Forge the Universe. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Since you don't want to give it to me, I'll take it myself." Thud. Crack. Crack. The rocks on the dome fell, and Han Fei didn't even look at them. He slapped the rubble into powder and intended to rush forward. Behind him, Chong Xiaochong sighed. "This is too domineering. When can I also force my way into the formation and fight 10 people alone?" Limelight 7 said, "Don't fight 10 people alone. Blast out the surrounding bloodworms first." Thud. A piece of the dome that was the size of a small mountain fell down, smashing into the blood tide. Chong Lulu shouted while controlling the boat, "Han Fei, stop fighting. If you keep fighting, we'll be eaten by the bloodworms." Why does the water in the blood pool seem to be dropping? Suddenly, even Han Fei realized that dozens of large vortexes suddenly appeared in this blood pool and were madly sucking the boat. Han Fei said to Chong Xiaochong via voice transmission, "Hold on. Don't panic. Only idiots will run out along the tributaries. After I kill these few, I will find a way to take you out." Outside, the entire mountain range was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Up until now, only 3 mountains were still standing. Even so, there were still rubble falling from these 3 mountains. At this time, everyone found that these 3 mountains were a little different. Although they were also collapsing, they were protected by a large formation. There seemed to be dragons lying on the ground, giving off a strong pressure. Suddenly, someone rushed out of one of the blood pools on a boat. While rushing and bombarding, a large number of bloodworms chased after him. The main reason was that the bloodworms were too densely packed. Both the White Armor Emperor and the Life Queen frowned. The boat didn't seem to be a rare treasure, and there were so many bloodworms that it was beyond the scope of the trial. The White Armor Emperor glanced at the Life Queen and slapped out. On the top of the 3 mountains, a dragon shadow tried to rush out. However, the dragon shadow seemed to be too weak to resist such a blow. With a BM, the 3 mountains exploded. At that time, Han Fei was standing in the air, holding the embroidery needle in his hand, and was fighting 1 against 5. Hey! Let me ask you again, will you give it to me or not? If you don't, I will kill you immediately. Chapter 1355. At this moment, in the eyes of the blood demons, the only difference between Han Fei and a bully was that Han Fei was more ferocious and reckless. The top heavenly talents knew their limit. What was the difference between them and ordinary people? How far could they go in the future? When faced with difficulties, how should they deal with them? They all knew what to do and wouldn't do anything stupid. However, at this moment, Han Fei seemed to be courting death. This was beyond their understanding. For example, when Han Fei was robbing people, at the beginning, no one paid any attention to him. This was completely different from when Han Fei robbed the 7 academies. The heavenly talents of the 7 academies were only the best in the academies, and their grades were not bad. Perhaps they could be called elites, and some of the more outstanding ones could be called heavenly talent. However, none of the people in front of him was weak. The reason why they didn't show their strength was that Han Fei's performance was too strong. So that other people's killing moves and even their trump cards were nothing in front of Han Fei. This was no longer the difference between a heavenly talent and a heavenly talent, but an essential gap. At this moment, Han Fei held the embroidery needle and smashed down with the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. One of the blood demons threw out a sealing ball. Han Fei hit it more than 300 times, but it still didn't break. If there was no accident, this should be an ultra-quality divine weapon, the trump card of one of the heavenly talents. That person would rather give up the ultra-quality divine weapon than hand over the sun-moon shell. After all, if he gave up the sun-moon shell, he would lose everything. A heavenly talent ran into a secret realm and lost what he had accumulated for many years. Would he go back with his life intact? Some people didn't want to. After all, some of the treasures had taken a lot of effort to get. How could he give them away so easily? Although the ultra-quality divine weapon was powerful, this kind of one-time trump card was useless in front of Han Fei. In just a few breaths' time, the supreme-grade divine weapon was already shaking. Obviously, it couldn't hold on for too long. At this time, a large wave of blood toads surged up, gradually corroding Han Fei's boat. However, Han Fei casually threw out another boat. Then, the infinity water twisted and crushed these blood toads like ants. Even though some of the blood poisons could be sprayed on Han Fei, he was completely fine. The blood demons were all dumbfounded. Gotcha! Dozens of cracks had appeared on the sealing ball. As a matter of fact, Han Fei felt that if he could smash their boat and make them panic, they might admit defeat. However, this boat was clearly an ordinary wooden boat, but no matter how Han Fei bombarded it, it didn't work. These boats didn't even have a crack. Han Fei thought to himself, this ship must be a good thing too. It seems that only the blood toad can corrode it. It's quite resistant to attacks. Han Fei swung his rod again and again as fast as lightning. He roared, "Are you going to give it to me or not? If you don't, let's see how long you can last." At this moment, the 5 blood demons were chanting incantations together. At this point, they knew that this place was about to collapse, but they still didn't do anything. They all had their own ideas. They didn't think that Han Fei would really waste his time here at the risk of his life. After all, every heaven's favorite cared about their own lives. Han Fei was no exception. At this moment, the 5 of them worked together to summon a branch. When he saw this branch, the old turtle reminded him, "The evil energy is too strong. They are borrowing strength from the evil cultivators." Han Fei was stunned and looked at the branch that extended out of the void. It was bright red and made Han Fei feel that it was a bit like the vine in the demon purification pot. No, I can't continue to threaten them. Han Fei thought that these people must have a lot of wealth. If he took it by force, it might not be worth it. For example, if he really killed these people, he wouldn't be able to get any benefit. Han Fei frowned. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Beast King Art. Han Fei roared and his body swelled. Even his originally fat body seemed to have become thinner. At the moment when he activated the Beast King art, Han Fei's strength had reached the level of a peak-level explorer, even comparable to that of a demigod. Boom! Under the rod, only the sound of ka-ka-ka could be heard continuously. Dozens of cracks appeared on the ceiling ball in an instant. What? This is not the power of a Tao-seeking state cultivator at all. A blood demon's expression changed drastically and he shouted, Han Fei, why don't you stop? Han Fei shouted angrily, now you know to stop? What did you do just now? Pay up. As he spoke, the twig rolled over and Han Fei smashed it again. This was completely a brute force bombardment. With a ka sound, the branch broke into two. Han Fei sneered. In a few seconds, he hit the twig 100 times in a row, and the twig withered. Han Fei frowned, feeling that this twig was devouring and absorbing his power. It seemed broken, but in fact, it still had the power to fight. Han Fei dodged the strange twig and hit the ceiling ball dozens of times in a row. This time, the ceiling sphere was filled with cracks, and it looked like it was about to shatter. Han Fei shouted, pay up. Chong Lulu and the other two were not far away, dumbfounded. Fighting 1 against 5, Han Fei could still be so arrogant, beating the other parties so hard that they didn't even dare to shout. Chong Lulu was really envious. Seeing that the Blood Sea Divine Wood branches that they summoned together couldn't do anything to Han Fei, the blood demons looked at each other. Han Fei didn't seem to be joking. If he hit them a few more times, they would be finished. A blood demon threw out a Sun Moon shell and said hatefully, okay, you can have the Sun Moon shell, but you can't attack anymore. Every 10 kilometers we will throw out a Sun Moon shell. Han Fei frowned. Don't bother. I swear in the name of the Life Queen that as long as you pay up, I won't make things difficult for you. After all, there is not a big grudge between the Shuemu Heaven and your Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Hearing that, the few blood demons realized that the Life Queen's name had been brought up. However, they didn't know that Han Fei had never regarded the Life Queen as a believer. He had always regarded her as his junior sister. So Han Fei's words were not credible at all. Immediately they shouted, remember what you said? Otherwise, even if we die, we will still have the power to fight back. Han Fei scolded coldly, you talk too much nonsense. I'm just robbing you of a little bit of resources. Do you think I want to waste my time here with you? The blood demons looked at each other. At this point, the scene of the collapse of the Doomsday could easily press them into this sea of blood. The few of them gritted their teeth and unwillingly threw out the Sun Moon shell. Han Fei grabbed 5 Sun Moon shells with one hand, making Chong Lulu and the others envious. Did he really get them? Han Fei shouted, everyone must have resources worth 1,000,000 spiritual springs. Otherwise, I will let you go as many as I have. Hearing what Han Fei said, someone gritted his teeth. Han Fei, the Shuemu Heaven and our Blood Sea Divine Wood City don't have to do this. 1,000,000 spiritual springs, do you know how much that is? If all the participants had 1,000,000 spiritual springs, why would they risk their lives to look for resources? Han Fei curled his lips. I don't care. Let me see. Han Fei flipped through the Sun Moon shells and quickly calculated in his heart. However, there were too many things in these Sun Moon shells, so it was really not easy to calculate. Han Fei took a rough look and found that there were at most 3,000,000 caddies of spiritual spring in them. Among them, the amount of spiritual spring was actually only 800,000 caddies. Han Fei weighed it. 800 million points of spiritual energy, including the spiritual fruits, it was almost 1 billion. Including his own, it was about 1.2 billion points of spiritual energy. If he counted the guy who was killed by him before, he would have to calculate more, but it didn't exceed 1.5 billion points of spiritual energy. As for the other resources, he basically didn't want them. When the time came, he would take them back to expand his armaments, which could be regarded as a benefit to others as the future master of the Yin-Yang Heaven. Sure enough, this was a heavenly talent, a hot figure in a royal city. The speed of making money was really too fast. As the saying went, special opportunities depended on luck. If you wanted resources, you had to rob. There was nothing wrong with this logic. However, Han Fei shouted on the surface, "Hey, do you think I don't know how to count? These resources add up to no more than 2 million points of spiritual spring. I allowed you to owe me a little, but you've gone too far. You even gave me a 50% discount. Don't you want to leave?" These words made Chong Lulu and the others stupefied when they heard it. Chong Littleworm waved its claws and said, "More than 2 million caddies of spiritual spring? Oh my God, so much spiritual spring! How many insects does the insect queen have to raise?" The phoenix-headed Seven's eyes were like a fighting cock. "Han Fei, are you still not satisfied? This place is really going to collapse." Whoop! The bird feathers all over the sky smashed countless falling stones. No matter how the three of them controlled the boat, a large number of blood toads still stuck to it. In order to clean up the blood toads, Seven had almost plucked all his feathers. Han Fei swept away the twigs, but those blood demons had already begun to drift to a certain tributary without blood toads. Han Fei shouted again, "Stop! If you don't stop, I'm going to attack. Where's the rest of my money?" Han Fei chased them out. He didn't intend to really let these blood demons go. "Want to leave now? Are you kidding me? Have you ever seen an enemy keep his word? I, Han Fei, am not that kind of person." A blood demon shouted, "Han Fei, don't push your luck. This is already all we have." Han Fei scolded, "Nonsense. That's all you have? How can you be a top heavenly talent? Don't you feel ashamed?" They cursed in their hearts. F***ck, who the hell is this guy? Boom. Han Fei was about to raise his stick and smash it, when he suddenly felt a roar on his head, and suddenly his eyes lit up. He looked up, only to see a giant palm pushing horizontally. He actually saw the sky. Han Fei was dumbfounded. The old turtle said, "Not good. The noise here must be too loud, attracting the attention of people outside. To be able to destroy the restrictions here with a single palm strike, it must be the work of a king." Han Fei thought of something. "Then I have to kill these people. With the 3 kings here, killing one heavenly talent will definitely make 2 kings happy. Go to hell." Han Fei stepped out of the boat, and when he appeared, he drew his sword and cut the blood sea. Clang! Han Fei was stunned. The twig was still following him. Could it even keep up with him when he performed the star's passage? Suddenly, a voice echoed between heaven and earth, "Han Fei of the Waterwood Heaven, the strength you displayed just now has completely exceeded the limit of the ability trial. Now, do you want to kill the heavenly talents of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City in front of me? F***ck. A king?" Han Fei thought of something. "Didn't they say that the heavenly secrets of this place were disordered?" The old turtle said, "The seals have all been broken. How can the heavenly secrets be disordered?" Han Fei gritted his teeth. "Anyway, the Life Queen is here. What kind of king was this? Was he really going to make a move?" Han Fei shouted, "We're already here. It's useless to talk about this. Don't send people from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City here. Kill them." Chapter 1356. The Life Queen's response sounded at the same time as Han Fei's words. She said, "This is how the trial is. Is the Blood Sea Divine Wood City a sore loser?" Han Fei held the embroidery needle in his hand, pushed away the Blood Sea Divine Wood branch, and struck with all his strength with the rod. Suddenly, there was a flash in front of Han Fei's eyes, and a bloody light burst out. It seemed that the small branch he had just swept away had exploded. Han Fei had no time to react and blocked it with the rod. With a bang, half of the mountain top was directly blown up. The terrifying power crushed a large number of blood toads in the blood pool. The water of the blood pool sank dozens of meters deep. The Life Queen snorted. "Humph! Patriarch Blood Demon, Do you think I don't exist? Han Fei should have been swept into the blood pool by that power, but a few broad leaves appeared out of thin air and wrapped Han Fei. He glided for dozens of kilometers on the blood sea. Only then did Han Fei jump back to Chong Liuliu's boat. Huh! The self-explosion of the blood sea divine wood branch didn't hurt him? This kid has a strong physique. Everyone was amazed. The Life Queen said, "The seal has been opened. We can fly away directly." Chirp! Swoosh! Swoosh! The phoenix headed 7 soared into the sky and rushed straight into the sky. Chong Lulu and Chong Xiaochong followed closely behind. They really couldn't stand those blood toads. In order to resist the invasion of the blood toads, Seven's hair had almost fallen off. It was Han Fei. Fortunately, the Life Queen gave him a hand. At this moment, it seemed that he didn't have to find a way to get out. Immediately, Han Fei soared into the sky, but a fishing hook appeared in his hand. With a casual swing of the hook, the boat in the blood pool was hooked up and stuffed into Forge the Universe. At that moment, everyone was dumbfounded. "You're AF * King Heavenly Talent. Why do you want this boat?" Even the old turtle was confused and couldn't help asking, "What do you want this boat for?" Han Fei looked indifferent. "This is a treasure. It can withstand my repeated beating in the blood pool. There must be something magical about it. How can I let go of such a treasure?" The old turtle sighed and said, "Well, I forgot to tell you. The reason why this ship can withstand your attack is because it is supported by the power of the great Tao above the blood pool, and it floats by borrowing the Tao rhyme. Once it leaves the blood pool, it's just an ordinary boat." Han Fei was stunned. "Seriously?" The old turtle said, "If we look at these ships as weapons or treasures, how can they float in the blood pool for millions of years? Therefore, this was just an ordinary wooden boat that existed only to fairy people. The reason why there are blood ponds and fairies is only to eliminate a few people." Han Fei's lips twitched. "So, I regard a bunch of ordinary wood as treasures?" All of a sudden, Han Fei's face darkened. At this moment, how many people were looking at him? This time, he had lost a lot of face. The corners of the Life Queen's mouth twitched slightly when she saw this. She thought to herself, "This isn't my senior brother. If he didn't become a king, he wouldn't be able to recognize his senior brother." Humph! Above the sky, the void was full of cracks. Han Fei's speed wasn't fast. He wanted to fly somewhere else. In his eyes, he had just seen strange beasts running amok in the mountains. Some were fleeing, and only a small number of birds were hovering, devouring some of the dissipating dragon essence qi. Just now, the blood demons had all fled. Zhang Xiaotian and the others were nowhere to be seen, but they must have gone out. At this moment, seeing the entire mountain range collapsing, Han Fei couldn't help but be speechless. He couldn't stay here for long. However, just as Han Fei flew in the direction of the spiritual orchard, he heard a voice in the sky. "Han Fei's strength is too strong. This trial will be affected. Withdraw." The White Armor Emperor had seen Han Fei's ability and naturally knew that he couldn't stay. At least, he couldn't stay on this island now. Therefore, he directly took action and was ready to set the tone. Han Fei had attacked the Blood Demon Patriarch just now, so he definitely wouldn't stand on the Life Queen's side. The Life Queen said, "My Shuemu heaven is short 10 people." Sure enough, as soon as the Life Queen finished speaking, Patriarch Blood Demon said leisurely, "I'll throw a peak stage Tao-seeking expert over. Are you willing to do so?" Patriarch Blood Demon had roughly estimated Han Fei's strength through the power of the explosion of the Blood Sea Divine Wood Branch just now. Even if he wasn't at the peak stage Tao-seeking expert, he was definitely not far from it. Hearing this, many people were shocked. Especially those who participated in this trial, they felt their scalps go numb. A peak stage Tao-seeking expert had sneaked into the trial team? The Life Queen frowned. The White Armor Emperor said indifferently, "This person alone has already brought disaster to several places. Muwuhua, don't be dissatisfied. There was a moment of silence in the sky, and no sound came out. Seeing that the Life Queen didn't fight back, Han Fei knew that this matter wouldn't be easy. Being suppressed by the two kings, he immediately thought to himself, "Not good, this is not the time to be tough." Han Fei roared, "I can quit, but Zhang Xiaotian is as strong as me. If I leave, he will have to leave too." Han Fei's voice was trembling, and he spoke openly. Zhang Xiaotian was actually not far away, only a few hundred kilometers. Hearing this, he was furious. What the f***ck? Not weaker than him? Han Fei's strength had probably surpassed his by a lot. But now, how could he explain Han Fei's toughness? If he said that he was invincible, he couldn't hide it from the kings. Everyone already knew it, but he couldn't say anything else. Why was Han Fei so strong? His physique? His soul? His combat skills? Speed? Han Fei had almost no shortcomings in these aspects. But Han Fei didn't have any outstanding skills, which made him a little uncertain. But Zhang Xiaotian didn't know that the Han Fei he knew was only the Han Fei before he reached his peak strength. How strong was Han Fei at this moment? He had no idea. Therefore, Zhang Xiaotian still felt that Han Fei was stronger than him, but only about 20% stronger at most, which wasn't too outrageous. This made him feel that what Han Fei said was actually not too outrageous. It was a pity that he couldn't take all the opportunities this time, and Han Fei took advantage of them. The Life Queen continued, "That's good. Tang Yu of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City was eliminated first, and Han Fei and Zhang Xiaotian left one after another. Since you insist on doing this, so be it." Han Fei felt that a big hand appeared in the void in front of him and grabbed at the air. The next moment, he appeared above the distant clouds, no longer on the island. Han Fei turned his head and saw the Insect King beside him with its hands hanging naturally. Han Fei said, "Greetings, Insect King." The Insect King glanced at Han Fei. Are you at the peak of the elementary level?" The peak of the elementary level was the level that Han Fei showed to deceive others. Otherwise, if he revealed his true strength, even the kings would be shocked. Even though Han Fei showed that he was at the peak of the elementary explorer, everyone knew that Han Fei's peak combat power was much higher than that. Even if he was only at the peak of the elementary level, it had already shocked many people. How long had it been since Han Fei's tribulation? He was already at the peak of the elementary level? It hadn't even been a year. Chang Shuai-Qin frowned slightly. Shuemu Tian must have put in a lot of effort for Han Fei. Zhang Xiaotian was actually at a disadvantage? The Fish Dragon King was even killed by this man. All of this gave him a bad premonition. As for the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, Yun Chu didn't seem to feel anything. He seemed to have received some secret information. The moment Han Fei was taken away from the island, Zhang Xiaotian appeared next to Chang Shuai-Qin, who said casually, "There's nothing we can do." Zhang Xiaotian nodded slightly and seemed to be talking to Chang Shuai-Qin telepathically. At this moment the Life Queen said, "Take Han Fei back first. Don't cause any trouble." The Insect King said coldly, "I'll see him off in person." Swoosh! After walking for a long time, the Insect King took Han Fei through the void several times before they finally stood proudly on the surface of the sea. The Insect King said, "Okay, I don't think anyone will catch up. If you go back to the Shuemu Tian now, you'll be easily ambushed. Let's wait here for a few days, and when the trial is over, the Life Queen will take you back in person." Han Fei cupped his hands. "Thank you, Master Insect King." The Insect King looked at Han Fei strangely. "Your performance was too dazzling. I'm afraid your portrait will spread all over the Baibei Royal City in a short time. Even the Blood Sea's Sacred Wood City will remember you. So, are you going to return to the Shuemu Tian or stay outside? Or are you going to return to the Yinyang Heaven?" Han Fei was slightly tempted. Return to the Yinyang Heaven immediately? That wasn't his style. Besides, he still had chess pieces that he hadn't set up yet. Therefore, he couldn't go back immediately. However, he couldn't break into the Baibei royal city in a short time. This time, he had gone around in circles to escape from the Baibei royal city. If he went there again, he didn't know how he could escape from the Baibei royal city. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. With a thought, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, and the insect man Han Fei, or the Life Queen, also appeared on the surface of the sea. The insect king nodded slightly. Queen. The Life Queen didn't change her face but continued to stare at Han Fei's face as if Han Fei had a twin. The moment the Life Queen showed up, she immediately closed her eyes. After about 10 minutes, she nodded slightly. I've learned everything from my original body. Do you have anything in particular to say? Han Fei immediately said, Yes, I do. First of all, Zhang Xiaotian is a reincarnated expert. But if there's a chance, he must die. The insect king frowned slightly, and the Life Queen was slightly surprised. A reincarnated expert? That's rare. No wonder he didn't die after going to the weird place with you. It turns out that he's a reincarnated expert. Han Fei said, That's all. It's just some opportunities. The Life Queen glanced at the Insect King. Insect King, please seal this place. With a swish, the Insect King disappeared. The Life Queen finally took a deep look at Han. Where is teacher? Chapter 1357. Just now, the Life Queen only saw the reincarnation of the Water Fairy. In fact, the reincarnation was very different from the real body. It could only be regarded as a part of the real body. In the future, it would eventually return to its real body. Therefore, the Life Queen cared more about the location of the Water Fairy's real body. However, Han Fei couldn't help but think, even though the Life Queen is my nominal junior sister and a king-level powerhouse, I don't have much contact with her. However, after all, he did not have much contact with them, so he did not have enough trust in them. Although he felt that it might not be a problem. However, after seeing people like Ren Tianfen, Old Han, and Li Daxian, Han Fei always felt that the world of the strong was a bit too full of tricks and schemes. What if the Life Queen also had her own plans? So Han Fei said, My teacher sacrificed his body in order to be reborn and find the last fertile land in the Age of Doom. So, he is temporarily residing in my soul. When he finds a suitable place, he will wake up from his sleep and embark on a new path. The Life Queen took a deep look at Han Fei. She didn't know much about the Water Fairy. She only knew that the Water Fairy's soul and body seemed to have lost contact, and his soul and body had already fallen into a deep sleep. Therefore, what Han Fei said wasn't a big problem. However, the only thing she was worried about was the situation in the Yin-Yang Heaven. Was that place really suitable for the Water Fairy's growth? The Life Queen said, The war in the Yin-Yang Heaven is not over yet, and you haven't become the master of the Divine Palace yet. Since my teacher is residing in your soul, what will you do if something happens to you in the future? Han Fei said, Don't worry, I have a backup plan. Even if I die, I will make arrangements for my teacher in advance. The Life Queen suggested, Why don't you let my teacher stay in the Waterwood Heaven and slowly nourish him with the aura of the Divine Palace? Han Fei shrugged. My teacher has fallen into a deep sleep now. I can't call him out for the time being. After all, Han Fei and the Life Queen belonged to different divine palaces. Even if they were close, the Water Fairy was a king, or even an existence that surpassed kings. Although Han Fei had the help of the Life Queen, it had taken him several life and death situations to rescue the Water Fairy. Besides, Han Fei didn't fully trust the Life Queen. How could he let the Water Fairy stay in the Waterwood Heaven? Moreover, the Water Immortal was now in the form of an ancient species, and had even formed its own Tao seed. At this time, if it was taken away by someone, what if they became greedy? After all, they were all plant-type creatures. The Life Queen must know how to use this type of Tao seed. Even if the Life Queen treated the Water Fairy with sincerity, what would she do in times of crisis? Would she bet on the water fairy? After all, it was still unknown whether the water immortal could walk on the king's path again. All of this strengthened Han Fei's determination to take the water fairy away. Han Fei looked at the Life Queen and smiled faintly. I can release my soul. You can try and see if my teacher will come out. The Life Queen looked at Han Fei quietly, then finally shook her head and said, I won't look at it. Since you're so confident, then take me to the Yin-Yang heaven to have a look. If something unexpected happens, remember to send teacher to the Shuemu sky. The Life Queen was no fool. Since Han Fei was willing to release his soul, it meant that he had absolute confidence that he couldn't find or wake up the water fairy. In that case, if she peeped at Han Fei's soul again, she would inevitably have a grudge in the future. After all, Han Fei was the heir to the king's throne. In terms of status, he was equivalent to her, and nominally, he was her senior brother. It was naturally inappropriate to do so. Unfortunately, the Life Queen still thought that if the water fairy could be in the Shuemu sky, then in the near future, the Shuemu sky might usher in a situation where two kings coexisted. At that time, her side could break the threat of the White Shell Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Naturally, Han Fei also considered this. He said, actually, even if my teacher returns as a king, he can't break the threat of the White Shell Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City in a short time. So, why don't we wait a little longer? The Life Queen asked. Oh? Why do you say that? Han Fei smiled and said, how can a sea demon not understand this? Although the White Shell Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City are not on good terms. However, once the two kings of the Shuemu sky coexist, if they aren't stupid, they will join forces. Why don't you wait for me? Wait for you? The Life Queen really wanted to say, you underestimate the king's domain. It'll be good enough if you can steadily become a venerable within 100 years. How dare you think about the king's domain? However, thinking of Han Fei's many means, the Life Queen felt that maybe Han Fei was indeed a heavenly being. Anyway, a few decades were just a blink of an eye. Even if the water fairy stayed here, it was impossible for him to become a king in a few decades. It was better to see how Han Fei would grow in the next few decades. If he could become half a venerable in 10 years, gain enlightenment in 50 years, and steadily become a mid-level venerable in 100 years, it would already be extraordinary. That way, the water fairy could stay in the Yin-Yang sky. The Life Queen nodded slightly. Okay. Since my teacher is with you, let's leave it at that for now. There are still 2 years left before you come here. Do you want to go back to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? Or to the Outer Sea? Han Fei grinned. I won't go back to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree for the time being. It won't be too late for me to go back after I stabilize my cultivation in 2 years. The Life Queen said, although this sea is large, 3 forces coexist and many venerables are watching. You have to be careful. If something happens, you can activate the venerable token. By the way, what's your real combat power? Han Fei had been hiding his strength. However, in the previous battle, Han Fei still accidentally exposed it. At least, everyone had seen the toughness of his physique. Han Fei paused and said, half a venerable. Hearing Han Fei's words, the Life Queen's heart did a flip. She was also speechless. She thought that Han Fei had used some kind of secret method to reach the strength of a peak-level explorer. However, there was a watershed between a peak-level explorer and a half a venerable. Since Han Fei said he was half a venerable, it meant that he really had this strength. However, the Life Queen was a little speechless. How long has it been since Han Fei transcended the tribulation? His strength is already comparable to a half a venerable? What kind of cultivation speed is this? Of course, the Life Queen said calmly, no wonder. I see that your fighting style and the use of spiritual energy are not proficient enough. The power of spiritual energy can't be fully unleashed. I think you should have learned the method of disassembling spiritual energy, but you haven't gone all the way. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Isn't it said that only explorers can better learn the method of disassembling spiritual energy? The Life Queen nodded. That's true. The reason why it's said that explorers are more suitable to learn the method of disassembling spiritual energy is that at that time, they will already have a comprehension of the Great Tao. At that time, when you disassemble spiritual energy, if there is a fusion of the Great Tao, the spiritual energy can exert its strongest state. In this regard, you can ask the Insect King to teach you. The paths you take are all extremely domineering. There should be something in common. After a few days, the trial should be over and the forces returned. Only then did the Insect King send the Life Queen's parasitic body and Han Fei back to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. In fact, they didn't really return to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, but to the area where they could return. On the periphery of the Sea of Flames. Han Fei said to the Life Queen, "Is the energy of that fire tree endless? How long can it burn?" The Life Queen didn't know what Han Fei meant, so she immediately said, "The fire tree has a fire characteristic. It can gather the fire essence between heaven and earth. If no one interferes with it, it can burn for tens of thousands of years." Han Fei couldn't help but grin. "Well, is there a lot of pure yang fire?" The Life Queen couldn't help but look at Han Fei. "What do you mean?" Han Fei chuckled. "Well, I may be short of ignition. About the pure yang power of 7 or 8 alien flames will be enough." The Life Queen, the Insect King, the Life Queen directly responded, "No, it's too noisy. If the fire tree loses so much power all at once, the wall of flames will immediately become unstable. Once the fire weakens, it will definitely attract the attention of the 2 royal cities. At most, I can provide you with the power of 1 alien flame. Any more and I won't be able to." Han Fei shrugged. "Okay. Then I'll think of a way myself." Suddenly the Life Queen said, "You owe me a lot. Tao-seeking state great demons, venerable great demons, alien flames. You have to keep it in mind and pay it back." Han Fei thought to himself, women will always be women. Even if she has reached the king realm, she is still a woman and very stingy. Seeing this scene, the Insect King's heart was in turmoil. Although he knew that Han Fei was extraordinary, his casual and impatient attitude when communicating with the Life Queen. "Are you a king or is the queen a king?" The Life Queen left first. The matter of the alien flame had to be dealt with after he went back. The Insect King grabbed Han Fei and stepped into a certain secret realm. The Insect King turned into a bald man. "Try to disassemble it with spiritual energy." Hearing this, Han Fei ignited fire in his hands and stripped the spiritual energy with the refining method. He was already quite familiar with this move. However, since the Insect King wanted to see it, he had to let him see it carefully. Seeing this, the Insect King raised his eyebrows slightly. "Your method of disassembling spiritual energy is quite strange. It's actually a refining method. Make the structure of the spiritual energy unstable, and then strip it," Han Fei said, "but this method will become more and more difficult as you go on. Because 1 grain of spiritual energy is too small, the spiritual energy will become more and more unstable in the later stages, and it will be very difficult to continue." The Insect King said a little stiffly, "Do you know what the conditions are to become a venerable?" Han Fei thought for a moment. "I really don't know. The old turtle didn't tell me either." Han Fei immediately said, "Old Yuan, you didn't even tell me this?" The old turtle said, "This is something you should consider after you reach the peak of the explorer realm. When your realm is high enough, I'll tell you. He's just telling you now to give you some benefits so that you can remember his favor." Han Fei realized that the old turtle did have a point. Otherwise, why would the Life Queen take the initiative to propose this? Han Fei looked at the Insect King again, smiled, and shook his head. "I don't know." The Insect King didn't notice Han Fei's change. He just said, First, the degree of disassembling spiritual energy must reach more than 70%, which is the basic requirement for becoming a venerable. The higher the number, the better. Han Fei thought for a moment. 70% didn't seem too high. The old turtle said, "That's the most basic requirement. Under normal circumstances, those who can disassemble spiritual energy to 80% are considered talented. 90% are heavenly talent. More than 90% are top heavenly talent." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What if it's higher?" The old turtle sneered. "You can try." The insect king said, "If you disassemble spiritual energy to 80%, you'll already be a rare heavenly talent." Han Fei's lips twitched. What the insect king said is a little different from what the old turtle said. Maybe this is the gap in vision and knowledge. The 80% in the old turtle's mouth can only be regarded as a talent. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Master Insect King, how much can you disassemble?" The Insect King glanced at Han Fei casually but said casually, "More than 80%, less than 90%. I'm still a little short." Han Fei murmured in his heart, "Good heavens, that's more than 85%. If the Insect King said it was still a little short, then it must be at least 88% or even 89%. In the old turtle's eyes, I'm a heavenly talent. Sure enough, the old turtle said, "I'm not bad. I do have the aptitude to become a king." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, how much did you disassemble?" The old turtle couldn't help but be smug. "Me? Hee hee. I'm afraid you won't believe me if I tell you that I'm a top heavenly talent." Han Fei thought to himself, "Shameless old man, if you want to say that you're the top heavenly talent of the top heavenly talents, just say it." Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Humph. I thought it was more. If you can disassemble it 100%, I'll admire you." "Nonsense," the old turtle said angrily. "No one in the world can disassemble it 100%, not even gods. If the spiritual energy is completely disassembled, isn't there nothing left?" Chapter 1358. Han Fei was shocked by the old turtle's solemn vow. Even gods couldn't completely disassemble spiritual energy? The old turtle had disassembled 95% of spiritual energy and had already become an emperor? From what he said, the higher the level of spiritual energy disassembly, the more difficult it would be. If the Insect King disassembled 80% of spiritual energy, he would become a king. In other words, if he wanted to become a king, 85% should be a watershed, and 90% should be enough. Of course, the higher the goal, the better, although it sounded difficult. Seeing Han Fei in a daze, the Insect King thought Han Fei was thinking about something difficult, so he said, "In fact, you don't have to worry too much. Most people only study the method of spiritual energy disassembly when they are peak-level explorers. You are only at the early peak level, and there is still a long way to go. Don't worry. At least, your understanding of spiritual energy disassembly is much earlier than ordinary people, and you have enough time to disassemble spiritual energy and polish your foundation. Besides, spiritual energy disassembly is actually not difficult." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly. "Not difficult?" Han Fei thought to himself, "You don't know what people with low talent will think. Listening to what you said, I already feel that it's very difficult." He heard the old turtle reply. This point, he did not speak irresponsibly. Spiritual energy disassembly is indeed not that difficult, but it's not that simple either. Besides, the sea expansion and sky opening are not only about the understanding of spiritual energy disassembly. The disintegration of spiritual energy is only beneficial for entering the revered ones and becoming kings, allowing one to comprehend a deeper level of power. It is also a way to temper one's foundation. The Insect King also explained, spiritual energy disassembly is just a means of polishing one's foundation. You have to confirm the great way yourself and walk out of it to become a venerable. At this time, the polishing of the foundation is meaningful. Further on, that is the road to becoming a king. That road is the most difficult. Han Fei thought to himself, which stage is easy? Every time I reach a new realm, some people will say that this realm is extremely difficult and important and I should polish it well. Now, Han Fei was used to it. Han Fei cupped his hands. Insect King, please teach me how to disassemble spiritual energy. Half a month later. In a secret realm more than 500,000 kilometers away from the fiery sea, Han Fei sat cross-legged. A white light flashed in front of him, like a ray of starlight being annihilated. The Insect King told Han Fei 2 ways to disassemble spiritual energy. One was the nibbling method. This method didn't use the spirit chi to nibble away at the outer layer. Instead, it treated the spirit chi like an onion wrapped in countless layers, peeling it off layer by layer. As long as he understood each layer, it meant that his disassembly progress would increase. The other was the Tao aura permeation technique, which was to use one's great Tao to permeate spiritual energy. Based on the degree of penetration, one could determine the degree of disintegration of one's spiritual energy. This method required Han Fei to have a certain understanding of his own Tao first. As a matter of fact, it wasn't suitable for someone like Han Fei who had a rapid breakthrough. It was more suitable for experts like Yuan Dao, who had been stuck in the semi-venerable realm for a long time. Now, together with his own forging disintegration method, Han Fei had 3 ways to disassemble spiritual energy. These 3 methods achieved the same result through different approaches. Han Fei didn't feel that the dissociation method of forging was lacking in any way. Perhaps it was just his forging skills that were lacking. It was not as precise as the nibbling technique. Of course, this was only the method of disassembling spiritual energy. In addition to teaching Han Fei the method, the Insect King also taught Han Fei some principles. One was the accumulation of time. As long as one method worked, as long as he persisted in it and tried repeatedly, he wouldn't be too weak in the end. Also, the Insect King emphasized the Tao aura permeation technique, saying that this method might be slow, but the effect was the best. He believed that Han Fei had used other methods before. In the future, when his Tao was set, he could use this method to try to disassemble spiritual energy. In addition, it was the communication of Tao, combat, and the use of battle spiritual energy few. The Insect King left. Han Fei tried for half a month in a row and didn't breathe a sigh of relief until this moment. It's really difficult. I've tried several methods. My own method is similar to the nibbling technique. I can't do anything about the Tao aura permeation technique. In half a month, I only disassembled 55% of the spiritual energy. It's really difficult to polish the foundation. The old turtle couldn't stand it anymore. Look, is this what a human being is saying? The old turtle said to Han Fei, your Tao has been set, but you don't quite understand it yet. Besides, you're an explorer trying it for the first time, and your progress is already very extraordinary. If you can understand the Tao more deeply, it shouldn't be a problem for you to disassemble more than 70% of the spiritual energy in the next year or 2. Han Fei curled his lips. Only 70%? That's not good enough. The old turtle said angrily. 70% is enough for you to become a venerable. What else do you want? Han Fei suddenly stood up. I'm not in a hurry. Although my golden body is not fully developed, it should be only a little bit away. It just so happens that I can make a breakthrough while I still have resources on me. The old turtle didn't care about this. Han Fei's opportunity this time was really too great. If it were an ordinary person, if they could get this opportunity, they would probably have a smooth journey and directly break through to the semi-venerable realm. Of course, if it were an ordinary person, they might not be able to withstand such a huge amount of energy, and it was more likely that they would directly explode. Han Fei lowered his head, looked at his fat body, and thought to himself, as long as I make a breakthrough, I can completely restore my perfect figure. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. In front of Han Fei, a spiritual spring emerged. In Forge the Universe, a massive amount of spiritual energy was rising. Just like the spiritual spring nourished the earth, at this moment, it was the spiritual energy nourishing the golden body, like polishing an exquisite artifact. Han Fei was not in a hurry to break through the barrier. This time, he planned to polish his body well, and when every inch of his body was full and solid, he would make a breakthrough. This polishing process took 3 days and 3 nights. Han Fei's golden body was dazzling, and the crack between his eyebrows had long been repaired. It should not affect the breakthrough anymore. With the previous 2 lessons, Han Fei didn't dare to break through recklessly this time. Relatively speaking, he was much more careful this time. Around Han Fei's body, spiritual energy rolled up, and energy scoured over and over again. His fat body was slowly thinning at a speed visible to the naked eye. The energy contained in Han Fei's body was transformed into his marrow, nourishing his flesh, veins, bones, bone marrow, etc. Half an hour later, with a crack, Han Fei broke through without encountering any hindrance. Han Fei could clearly feel that his strength had skyrocketed. However, after this breakthrough, Han Fei could foresee that there was still a long way to go before he could break through to the peak-level explorer level. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Han Fei didn't open his eyes but looked at his own data immediately. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 77, Advanced Explorer, Spiritual Energy 220,000/220,000 Spiritual Power 2800228002 Perception Range greater than 3,800 kilometers, Power greater than 858 waves, First Spiritual Heritage, Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage, Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level 65, Second Spiritual Beast, Unawakened, Main Art Sky Stealing Technique, Level 6 of Void Fishing, Venerable Level, Divine Quality. When he saw this data, Han Fei's expression changed slightly, but he still felt that it was reasonable. In the blood pool, his breakthrough was too hasty, and he had no time to polish it. In the end, his body was filled with a lot of energy. This time, it was used up. It would be difficult for him to improve his strength again in a short time. Besides, he was already an advanced explorer, but his soul power hadn't been replenished yet. It could be seen that although cutting off his soul to create an external incarnation for himself, the price was definitely not small. Even though he made consecutive breakthroughs, his perception range was only 200 kilometers higher than before. It could be seen that the strength of his soul was far inferior to when he was a junior explorer. Only in terms of strength, because his golden body was almost complete, it had soared a lot. But if he wanted to improve it again, he had to continue to polish his foundation and temper his body. If his bones were condensed into a golden body, but his flesh and blood couldn't keep up with the level, it would be uncoordinated, which would also take time to stabilize. Of course, there were 2 most important things for Han Fei at the moment. One was to replenish his soul power, and the other was to replenish his lost vitality. Without the 1,000 Mountains ancient realm, how could he quickly replenish the treasures of the thousands of heavenly talents? It would probably take some time. After all, not all the sea creatures were peak-level sea spirits or Tao-seeking state creatures, and he couldn't slaughter the powerful sea beasts all at once. After all, there were only a few powerful sea creatures. Places like the White Shell Royal City would often bring some exceptionally talented creatures to the outside of the Royal City for them to fight and kill to select the most powerful creatures. But if he went there and killed too many of them, it would definitely arouse suspicion. Han Fei pondered for a moment. To the west of the Sea of Flames was the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, and he couldn't go there. However, the Fish Dragon King could. Even if he buried a pawn, he could go there. Then, he would search for treasures for 2 years according to the Life Queen's secret realm map. During this period, he could also sharpen himself and consolidate his current cultivation. 3 months later, Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Master Xueqin, I don't know why, but recently, a talented fish monster has appeared in the sea and specializes in hunting Dao-seeking state monsters. These days, we have killed more than 30, but we haven't even found the big fish. Xueqin frowned. Although there are many Dao-seeking state creatures, there are not many. They died one after another in the territory of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. That's indeed a problem. But how can you be sure that it's a fish monster? The Blood Demon said respectfully, because of the bite marks. Although that mysterious fish monster hunted and devoured most of the Dao-seeking state monsters, there were occasionally creatures it didn't eat. Overall, it's a big fish with a normal size of about 10 to 15 meters. This judgment shouldn't be a problem. Xueqin nodded slightly. I see. If you can't find it, it must be at least a legendary creature. Even. The Blood Demon's heart trembled. Could it be that Lady Xueqin suspects that it is a legendary creature? They had seen legendary creatures in the vast sea. But legendary? They had never seen one before. What the Blood Demon didn't know was that Xueqin's heart did a flip. Is it a mysterious creature?